Chapter 419. Listening to Immortal Toya's story, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was lost in deep thought. On the Immortal boat, Immortal Toya quietly cast a sidelong glance at Senior Immortal next to him, a few beads of cold sweat silently running down his forehead. 90% of the story just now was true, and the remaining 10% was Immortal Toya exaggerating and imagining the events themselves. He used this method to tell the story of a sad man who had been cuckolded, who had divorced his wife out of resentment, and who had allowed her to marry someone else. After going through all kinds of tribulations, he had seen through life and death, and had seen through the world of mortals. Actually, Immortal Toya had always thought that while this story sounded very tragic, it didn't have a bad ending. At the very least, Commander Nalan had obtained a good release after this incident. If he was still alive now, his cultivation would definitely be unfathomable. But in the 100 years since he had inherited the ancestral land, Immortal Toya hadn't heard any more news about Zen Master Nalan. Perhaps he had already passed away. Senior Immortal, after listening to this story, do you have any thoughts? Immortal Toya turned his head slightly and asked. He felt that he had already given a clear enough hint this time. From his first Immortal Boat story to his second story about Commander Nalan, there were undoubtedly two key words that were mentioned the most: first, children, and second, marriage with a child. Of course, the most important key word was still marriage. This was already no longer a hint, but a blatant and explicit statement. Furthermore, it wasn't a real hammer, but a Muay Thai combination whirlwind hammer. After a moment of deep thought on the Immortal Boat, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal raised his head to look at Immortal Toya. Brother 2, I've just finished listening to your two stories. Immortal Toya, Senior Immortal, do you have anything to say? Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, from this ancestral land to this Immortal Boat, it seems that everything you've obtained, Brother 2, has been built on the misfortunes of other people's families? Immortal Toya. He was actually speechless. That's inauspicious. Do you want me to find a fortune teller I know to do a divination for you? My divination isn't accurate. The young man in white had a very serious look in his eyes as he looked at Immortal Toya. By the way, Brother 2, why do I feel like there's something wrong with the way you're looking at me today? It's nothing. You think too much, true monarch. We'll arrive at the island in front of us. I've asked the old auntie on the island to cook some dishes. Let's sit down and talk. Immortal Toya sighed in his heart. Now that plan number 2 had failed, he could only come up with another plan. And the third and final stratagem: if he didn't succeed, he would die trying. Brother 2, you specially cooked a dish? I'm just here to give you a gift, no need to be so polite, said grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. He had never been to Chrysanthemum Island before. Originally, he just wanted to take a stroll around the island before leaving. There were still 6 rings left on his hand. He still had to give them to Tsilyanjinran, 9 times man, and the others later. It won't take too long. I've already prepared an immortal car. We'll eat in it and show Senior Immortal around in passing, Immortal Toya said with a smile. All right then. It's rare for you to come. Brother 2, you're too polite. It was hard for grenade-throwing Senior Immortal to refuse such hospitality, so he could only agree. The two of them landed on the island one after another. As far as the eye could see, Chrysanthemum Island was filled with meticulously arranged chrysanthemum gardens, which were divided according to color and species. From a distance, it gave off a poetic feeling. On a stone tablet at the entrance of the island was a poem written in gold: picking chrysanthemums under the eastern fence, leisurely gazing upon the southern mountain. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal took a deep breath, and felt comfortable all over. The spirit chi on Chrysanthemum Island was dozens of times denser than in the city, not only because the spirit chrysanthemums here had a natural ability to absorb spirit chi, but also because of the island's unique feng shui. In fact, it was obvious that the Nalan clan had been a famous family back then. There had to be a reason why the Nalan clan had set their sights on Chrysanthemum Island and set up their entire clan here. If I wasn't in such a hurry today, I would definitely stay on the island. Brother 2, it's so comfortable here. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal couldn't help praising him. Immortal Toya laughed. Senior Immortal, you flatter me. There's plenty of time in the future, there's always a chance. If you want to suck chrysanthemums in the future, just let me know in advance and I'll arrange everything. Suck chrysanthemums? One whiff of these spirit chrysanthemums of mine can prolong your life. There are people who suck cats and dogs out here, so sucking chrysanthemums at my place is actually very good. The two of them walked through the chrysanthemum maze on the island in silence. It was only then that grenade-throwing senior immortal realized that every chrysanthemum garden on the island was part of the maze. There was a flight restriction here, and it would be very difficult for anyone below the soul formation stage to get out once they got caught in the maze. This was a maze set up by our ancestors to protect the elixirs refined in the core alchemy room, Immortal Toya said. My Toya clan used to be a large clan that produced elixirs in bulk. Every year at the end of the year, we were too busy, so we would recruit some peripheral alchemists and have them live in the guest rooms on the outskirts of the island. But these outsiders always had dirty hands and feet on the island. After that, the maze was set up. But actually, it's useless now. Now that the legal system is comprehensive and surveillance is everywhere, anyone with a brain won't break in at will. Immortal Toya shrugged and smiled slightly. Why didn't you get rid of the maze? Our ancestors set it up, and we've already applied for a patent. Now we call it an intangible cultural heritage. Previously, several people from Nanhan Nation came to me to learn how to set up a maze. I was afraid that they would say they were the ones who developed it, so I registered it ahead of time. I was thinking about opening up Chrysanthemum Island's tourism industry when I can't refine elixirs anymore. Isn't escape room now popular? This chrysanthemum maze is the selling point. Brother 2, you're as business-minded as ever. Grenade-throwing senior immortal clicked his tongue. As they walked, grenade-throwing senior immortal finally saw an immortal car parked in front of them. At that moment, grenade-throwing senior immortal couldn't help asking, by the way, what did brother to cook? Immortal Toya secretly patted his head. He had actually almost been led astray by senior immortal just now. He had forgotten what he was supposed to do. But now, he knew that his chance had come. It's just some home-cooked dishes, it's nothing. Immortal Toya stared at the young man in white next to him, his cold gaze giving grenade-throwing senior immortal a chill down his back. Mandarin duck hot pot, wife cake, husband and wife lung slice. At that moment, realization finally dawned on grenade-throwing senior immortal. Brother 2. I thought you were a little strange today. Are you hinting at something today? Senior immortal, you finally figured it out? Immortal Toya was subconsciously delighted. But before he could rejoice, grenade-throwing senior immortal's next words directly made him collapse. Grenade-throwing senior immortal sighed meaningfully and patted Immortal Toya on the shoulder. I know it hasn't been easy for you to raise Jean Sher and Ian Sher all these years. It's indeed time for you to find a stepmother for these two children. Immortal Toya, no, it's not like that, senior immortal. Grenade-throwing senior immortal, don't be shy, I know a girl called Shinla who's pretty good. How about you add her on WeChat? Chapter 420. On a spirit mountain on the outskirts of Jinghua City, there was an elegant little pavilion that no one knew about. The area around the spirit mountain was covered in a powerful barrier, and anyone below true immortal level wouldn't be able to spy on this place. Even the most advanced scientific equipment couldn't detect any trace of this elegant little pavilion. Because this was where General E, one of the 10 founding generals, usually stayed. But while it was official business, General E actually didn't need to worry about most things. His current state was the same as Marshal Zhang's in the family apartment. Both of them were among the 10 generals, and powerful ones at that. In terms of martial prowess, General E and Marshal Jiang were already ranked first and second among the 10 generals. Furthermore, both of them thought they were number one. There were almost no missions for them to carry out on a daily basis, unless there was an SSS-level wanted criminal that they had no choice but to capture, such as the old devil from before, then they would specially issue a mission for their help. 20 minutes ago, there was a tea table by the window in elegant little pavilion. The windows were very low, and through them, it felt like sitting at the top of the sky and looking down on all the other small mountains. General E held a cup of tea and cracked melon seeds. This bunch of people is really interesting. General E played with his phone. When Dharmaraja had made the group chat earlier, he had added his alternate account 9 times man into it. As for the origin of this chat group, it was a long story. I haven't asked General E yet. How did you get to know this bunch of juniors? Asked an old man with white hair and a beard sitting opposite General E. This old man's surname was Tang and his first name was Chen. He was General Yi's trusted aide, and also Elegant Little Pavilion's butler and gardener. Once General E received a mission from the top, he would be gone for more than half a month or even several months. Someone had to personally take care of the flower fields near Elegant Little Pavilion. When people got older, they especially liked to take care of flowers and plants, which General E had previously summed up as the hobby of the elderly. However, after joining Grenade-throwing Senior Immortals chat group, General E had developed a second hobby, which was pretending to be cute and chatting with the group. I met them on a mission before. It wasn't convenient for me to expose my identity, so I pretended to be a junior with the Daoist name 9 times in one night, who is actually my adopted son. General E stared at the screen without turning and couldn't help laughing. But this kid has never been interested in cultivation, and is just a good-for-nothing golden core cultivator. This would have been unthinkable 1,000 years ago. Old Tang felt that if there really was such a thing as knowledge from the afterlife, that group of golden core cultivators who had painstakingly cultivated for hundreds of years, but in the end had no hope of breaking through to the nascent soul stage and died of old age, would most likely be so angry that they would throw open their coffins and jump out. Even Newton couldn't keep them down. So when he heard what General E said, Old Tang couldn't help nodding. It would be great if there were more juniors like this in our modern cultivation circle. Old Tang is right. Although the people in this group are all juniors, they aren't ordinary people. I've heard of almost every one of them. But... Saying this, General Yi's eyes suddenly narrowed slightly. There's actually another person in this group who I'm very interested in. So far, I haven't been able to verify this person's true identity. Old Tang chuckled. Someone who can interest General E. It looks like this person isn't simple. General E nodded. Everyone in the group calls this person Ling Junren, but his real realm isn't at the perfected person realm. This is just a customary title. Everyone in the group respects this Ling Junren very much, and is afraid of offending him. This old man once sent people to make indirect inquiries and investigate this person's identity from various angles. Old Tang was curious. And the result? General E sighed. It's all mosaic. Old Tang. Chapter 421. Why is there a mosaic? Old Tang was puzzled. At first, I also suspected that something might have gone wrong, but I later realized that no matter what kind of information it was, it would turn into a mosaic in my hands. So this old man now suspects that this senior might have used some kind of spell, General E said. What kind of spell? I don't know yet. General E shook his head. At first, I thought it was just a smokescreen or an illusion. At my current realm, as long as I open my heavenly eye, there's no spell that can hide from me, unless the level of this person's spell surpasses mine. Old Tang sucked in a cold breath. A spell surpassing a true immortal's level? That's right. General E nodded. 5th level soul formation, 6th level perfected being, 7th level itinerant immortal, 8th level true immortal. Of course, this old man has also heard that level 8 spells aren't the limit for true immortals, and that a small number of true immortals can use 9th grade transcendent spells that surpass level 8. It's very likely that what this senior Ling is using is a 9th grade transcendent spell. Old Tang immediately understood. If even General E can't detect the smokescreen this senior has used, then it's really possible that what General E says is true. This senior might be a great expert who can use a 9th grade transcendent spell. But has General E ever thought that there might be another possibility? This old man knows what you want to say. General E smiled and pinched his mustache. You think this senior Ling might be a venerated immortal, don't you? Old Tang nodded. To tell you the truth, I indeed have this thought. But I think you're worrying too much. It's simply impossible. General E said in a low voice. General E, can you tell me why? It's true that there are indeed venerated immortals in this world, because they did exist before. But after so many years, our Huaxiao nation has joined forces with dozens of powerful countries to search for them, and we've never found any clues. Even if it's only the immortal Zhen Yuan who stepped into the venerated immortal realm recorded in our nation's historical records, that's just a legend. No one has ever seen a living senior of this realm in the world. For us cultivators, the realm of cultivation is for longevity. Although the theory of the great Tao of eternal life has been mentioned a long time ago, it is indeed too illusory and simply impossible. Even those seniors in the immortal venerable realm are just a pile of bones buried underground. Moreover, no one in our era will cultivate to the immortal venerable realm. What do you mean? Elder Tang was confused. General E said meaningfully, rumor has it that if you want to become a venerated immortal, you must undergo the samsara spirit tribulation. However, in order to pass the cycle of reincarnation, one would need to consume an enormous amount of spiritual energy. In this era, although the speed of cultivation was fast, the spiritual chi of heaven and earth was not as abundant as it was in the past. Sooner or later, it would be exhausted. Maybe a few thousand years, maybe 10,000 years later. Old Tang understood. This was the theory of the end of days that had been proposed in the current world. He remembered that a singer had written a song with the theme of the end of days, which was still fresh in Elder Tang's memory. The lyrics were as follows: when the world had no edges and corners, when the flow of spiritual energy stopped. When time stands still, day and night are not separated. When the era of spiritual power disappeared, the most important thing was that the theory of the end of days wasn't nonsense, and had already gained the support of many bigwig experts from all over the world. This topic was a little heavy and sad, and for a moment, the two old men in elegant little pavilion fell silent. Although their positions were different, they had both experienced major historical events and witnessed countless epochs in the cultivation world. They had also witnessed Huaxiao nation's construction step by step and had transcended time and time to the present. The end wasn't what they wanted to see. After a few minutes, General Yi's tense expression finally relaxed. He sipped his tea and calmed his thoughts, then couldn't help smiling. Old Tang, this topic is too heavy, we shouldn't discuss it. Who knows what will happen in the future, maybe things will turn for the better. You're right, General E. Old Tang nodded. Back to the topic of Senior Ling, there's one more thing this old man hasn't said. General E said, there's actually a very simple reason why I don't think this Senior Ling is a venerated immortal. Old Tang, you have to know that supreme experts at the venerated immortal realm all have something called structure in their hearts. This type of senior has very high standards, and if they really were able to live through that era, they basically wouldn't join chat groups. Old Tang. Can Old Tang imagine a venerated immortal senior chatting online at home and eating cheap snacks like spicy sticks and crispy noodle snacks every day? General E asked. Old Tang shook his head weakly. Indeed, I can't imagine it. That's why this Ling Zhenren can't be a venerated immortal. Clutching his phone, General E was actually a little depressed in his heart. If he could be a venerated immortal with this level of wisdom, this old man would have gone through the samsara spirit tribulation 1,000 years ago. Old Tang, if I have the chance, this old man will definitely find this Ling Zhenren and exchange blows with him personally. General Yi's eyes were deep in thought, and he quickly waved his hand. Let's not talk about this, it's very annoying, Old Tang smiled. How about I play chess with General E? No, General E opened a music app on his phone. Come on, listen to a song first to calm down. This is a song that my adopted son 9 Times Man sang a while ago, expressing his dream of pursuing the entertainment industry. Good. I'm all ears. Old Tang nodded seriously. After a delay of about 2 seconds, the prelude to the song started playing. Then, a voice directly pierced Old Tang's eardrums like a thunderclap. Chasing dreams, chasing dreams, chasing dreams of show business, chasing dreams. We are pure, 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 pure. Old Tang was directly stunned. General E, how is it, Old Tang? Old Tang, General E, tell me the truth. If you don't, this old man will get angry. Old Tang was shaken, and he rubbed his temples. The prelude is very passionate, it's a good song, General E laughed. Ha ha ha. This old man knew that Old Tang's taste is indeed the same as mine. Old Tang, General E, this song is very popular online. And even you, Old Tang, think it's good. Do you know what Dubon's rating for it is? Old Tang shook his head a little fearfully. General E held up 2 fingers. Old Tang, this old man was furious at that time. If it wasn't for my adopted son stopping me, this Dubon would have already turned into bean paste. General E sighed deeply. In today's society, if a song isn't as popular as someone else's, they give out bad reviews. Those professional players can't beat anyone else in a game, but they say they have cheats. This old man is very disappointed. Old Tang. Chapter 422. A lot of things that Wang Ling couldn't have imagined had happened in 1 week. Wang Ling felt that there was a 90% chance that it was because the Great Fortune spell was still in effect. Why had Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal accidentally put the ring on his ring finger? Why had Dharmaraja happened to discover him giving the ring to someone else later? And now, because of a small misunderstanding about leaving the group, Dharmaraja had personally come to apologize with crispy noodle snacks. At this point, Wang Ling completely understood. It turned out that it was all because of crispy noodle snacks. Wang Ling secretly wiped at his sweat. Sure enough, he couldn't use the Great Fortune spell casually in the future. Although he truly loved crispy noodle snacks, he couldn't cause all kinds of conflicts and unnecessary misunderstandings because of true love. Also, for some reason, Wang Ling had the feeling that someone was constantly investigating him. Although he didn't need to worry at all with the Great Shielding spell, there were times when he would have something like a 6th sense for danger. The stronger this feeling was, the more likely it was that there was a problem. Wang Ling lowered his eyes, his expression a little solemn. He felt that something big was about to happen, but the point was, why was his daily life always so messy? He just wanted to quietly buy a fried dough stick and a noble tea egg, eat them, and then go to school in peace. On Chrysanthemum Island, after Immortal Toya's crazy wave of explicit and implicit hints, it was clear that the situation was completely out of control. Although Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had also sensed something, it was completely different from what the brothers in the group were really concerned about. In the Immortal car, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was already in no mood to tour Chrysanthemum Island, and didn't even touch the food on the table. He blamed himself and felt that he was very stupid. He had never expected that after all these explicit and implicit hints from his good brother Immortal Toya, it would actually take him so long to realize that Immortal Toya wanted to find a girlfriend. Furthermore, this girlfriend wasn't the kind he could just casually find. At the same time, she had to shoulder the responsibility of being the future wife of Chrysanthemum Island's lord, and take good care of Jin Shi and Yin Shi. Senior Immortal, actually, it's not as complicated as you think. The corners of Immortal Toya's mouth twitched slightly as he felt completely confused. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, Brother 2, don't interrupt. I'm serious. Immortal Toya, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was very excited and grabbed Immortal Toya's hand. Brother 2, don't say anything. As Jin Shi and Yin Shi's godfather, I've always wanted to do something for them. Immortal Toya, Senior Immortal, it's not like that. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, I told you not to interrupt. Immortal Toya, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, I know a lot of people have pursued you before. For example, Headmaster Xingye of the 7 Stars sect. But that was in the past. You can consider the Shinla girl I mentioned to you before. If it really doesn't work out, there's actually a second candidate. That's my sister, Grenade-throwing Mother. Immortal Toya. Speaking up to this point, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's body involuntarily shivered. Immortal Toya saw this scene. Immortal Toya had only met Senior Immortal's sister, Grenade-throwing Mother, once before. She was a female cultivator who had returned from abroad with a straightforward personality and was even a little staunch and open-minded. Sunglasses, curly hair, a midriff-bearing top, low-slung pants. This was Immortal Toya's first impression of this little sister. Because she lived abroad all year round, even her elder brother, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, only saw her a few times a year. I've always wanted to bring my sister back from abroad. If Brother 2 is willing to accept this unrestrained evildoer, that would actually be the best. That way, I'll have a reason to let her live in the country. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal spoke excitedly, and Immortal Toya sweated profusely as he listened. In all his years of refining elixirs, he had never sweated as much as he had today, sitting in front of a furnace at such a high temperature. True monarch, can you listen to what I have to say? All right, go ahead. Brother 2, Immortal Toya took a deep breath, then plucked up his courage to speak. Senior Immortal, who gave you the ring on the ring finger of your left hand? Oh, that. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal hadn't expected Immortal Toya to ask this question, but since he had already promised Wang Ling, there was no way he would tell him. A friend of mine gave it to me. He refined a batch of holy weapon magic rings, and gave me one. He also asked me to take some back with me to give to the brothers and sisters in the group. He said this very naturally, and Immortal Toya couldn't detect anything out of the ordinary at all. Just as he said this, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal also handed him a magic ring. This is for you, Brother 2. Immortal Toya took the magic ring and examined it carefully. It was actually a third-class holy weapon magic ring. Furthermore, looking at the workmanship and details, Immortal Toya felt that this person was definitely very skilled in refining weapons. The most important thing about a magic ring was its color, and there were too many details on this magic ring. Although it was pitch black all over, when Immortal Toya sensed the powerful spirit power surging inside the magic ring, he could indeed sense how much effort this great weaponsmith had put into it. The artificer must have expended a lot of effort to create this magic ring. Although the structure of the magic ring didn't seem complicated, there was a saying that went, "Great Tao is the simplest." Many high-grade magic rings with excellent performance actually didn't look particularly outstanding. Fancy magic treasures had never been the mainstream in the cultivation circle. Simple and practical things were the real deal. After examining the magic ring for a while, Immortal Toya sighed in his heart. He felt that this was probably the truth of the matter. In fact, Senior Immortal wasn't someone who was good at deceiving his friends or lying to begin with. But there was one thing that Immortal Toya still didn't understand, and he couldn't help asking, why did Senior Immortal wear the magic ring on his ring finger? In my clan, this is a form of respect for an important friend. For magic treasures like jewelry, no matter what they look like, you have to wear them on your person for 7 days without taking them off as a sign of respect. If I wear it on the ring finger of my left hand, a lot of people will actually misunderstand that I'm married, but in fact, this is just a form of etiquette in my clan, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal explained. Immortal Toya nodded. So that's how it is. Never too old to learn, never too old to live. Then this time, Dharmaraja's misunderstanding was really big. When Senior Immortal left later, he still had to prepare an excuse to explain the whole story. Why do I feel like Brother 2 is very concerned about the ring on my left ring finger? Senior Immortal is now at the heart of the cultivation circle. In a situation where there's no news of Senior Immortal's wedding, it's hard to avoid misunderstandings about a ring on your left ring finger. Has Senior Immortal ever thought of applying some kind of invisibility liquid on the ring? Immortal Toya said earnestly. I accept Brother 2's suggestion. I'll definitely apply it later. It's indeed not good to cause misunderstandings. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal nodded hurriedly. But this ring is very special to me, and I won't take it off until I find someone I particularly admire. I also didn't expect Senior Immortal's weaponsmith friend to be so generous, casually giving away a ring of this quality. His magnanimity is really admirable. With one look, you can tell that he spent a long time refining this ring. Chapter 423. This weekend looked very lively to Wang Ling, but to Little Silver, it was a little bored. Ever since he had become infatuated with human chat tools, Little Silver had been holding his phone almost all the time. Holy beasts didn't need to rest at all. As long as Little Silver wanted to, he could stay awake for hundreds or even thousands of years. There was no such thing as burning the liver all night. Even if his liver was damaged, the heart of a holy beast could immediately restore it. But today's chat group was very strange, because no one actually spoke up. In the past, even when everyone in the group was busy, they would occasionally send emojis or fight pictures or something. At Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's house, Little Silver sat cross-legged on the sofa and stared fixedly at his phone screen. He tried sending up playful blue moon emoji, which had been very popular online recently. Then, he stared at his phone for a few minutes, but no one responded. Ah. So boring. With no one to chat with, Little Silver felt a deep sense of loneliness and despair. But a few minutes later, an unfamiliar ID called Immortal 2 suddenly added him as a friend in private. His profile picture was actually a woman's lip print, and the reason for the request was, "Your blood fascinates me." Little Silver's eyes narrowed slightly. His identity shouldn't have been exposed. Furthermore, he had only recently applied for a QQ chat account, so his level was actually very low. Furthermore, he wouldn't take the initiative to add other people, and generally speaking, no one would take the initiative to add him with this kind of low-level account. Little Silver looked carefully at the account details of this Immortal 2, and realized that this person's level was actually 3 crowns. This level was already higher than many of the people in the chat group. Then, this person's signature was as follows: "How nostalgic for the mouth of the past, the warmth on the tip of the tongue, SS." Little Silver's hands trembled. Could this be the human legend of a romantic encounter? No way, it couldn't be such a coincidence, right? When Little Silver had been bored, he had looked up online how to use the internet to have fun, and he had seen all kinds of answers online, such as watching TV shows or playing games. The former could kill some time, but games were really boring for Little Silver. For a liver god like him who almost didn't need to sleep, even if he was a little crazy when he drew cards, he still had a lot of time. In terms of time, who could outlast him? So in contrast, Little Silver still preferred to chat and browse the Jihu and Cultivation forums to see if there was any latest gossip or breaking news. Everyone had different preferences when it came to using the internet. Even sacred beasts were no exception. Apart from the above options, Little Silver also saw another option, which was the so-called Shake It. As long as people in the same city shook their phones at the same time, it was possible for them to link to the chat accounts of the fated person, and then a lot of indescribable stories would happen. However, this was not right either. I didn't even shake it. Why did he deliver himself to his doorstep? Crossing his arms, Little Silver stared at the screen. His heart raced and he suddenly felt a little nervous. Well, there's a first time for everything. You have to calm your mind. Little Silver admonished himself in his heart before he reached out and pressed the agree button. Just when he didn't know what to say, this girl actually sent him a red lip and left him 2 words. "Do you want a date?" Holy shit, Little Silver abruptly took a deep breath. Were all human little sisters nowadays so straightforward and open-minded? On the other side, after Loopy Toad had successfully added Little Silver's account, it straightaway clutched its stomach and laughed like a dog on the floor. A holy beast was nothing more than this. Its awareness of tricks was really too weak. In the end, I'm still too young. I'm easily fooled. Wang Ling also saw this play out, but didn't do anything to stop it. In his view, this was a practical education for a newcomer from an old senior who had already officially entered human society and had a certain awareness of tricks. And Little Silver was clearly the newcomer in this education class. As long as he didn't go overboard, Wang Ling felt that teasing him was only good and harmless. Loopy Toad stared at the screen. It had already been a full 5 minutes since the message had been sent, but Little Silver still hadn't replied at all. Looking at the time, Loopy Toad guessed that Little Silver was probably researching online how to respond during this time. Sure enough, after a while, Little Silver sent a message. "Sorry, miss, a delivery just arrived." Little Silver had just checked online how to deal with this kind of situation, but even though he had found something, he realized that he had already wasted a lot of time. Then, Little Silver checked online again and realized that in general, if you stood a girl up for a long time and didn't reply to her message, your favorability toward her would drop significantly. So, He simply made up a lie. AI, you're still too young. The moment it saw the message, Loopy Toad sneered. It knew that Little Silver was definitely lying, and was most likely very nervous right now. Although it didn't know exactly what Little Silver had found online, Loopy Toad wasn't flustered at all. It straightaway wrote the next message and sent it over. It's fine, I was also taking a shower just now. The fine foam ran through my black hair, and now it's silky smooth. Holding the phone, Little Silver's Adam's apple bobbed inexplicably. Can I hear your voice? Loopy Toad chuckled. Little Silver's question was clearly a test of its gender. Loopy Toad had asked Wang Ming to help it set up this account, and it was a limited edition pretty account. Not only was its level 3 crowns, it also had all kinds of unimaginable functions and permissions, such as the ability to restrict other people from deleting their messages and so on. Actually, Wang Ming had initially prepared this account for Wang Ling, but Wang Ling had disliked it because it was too high profile, so he hadn't used it until now. Although it hadn't been logged in for many years, it could be considered useful in Loopy Toad's hands recently. Loopy Toad remembered that this pretty account had a function called Super Voice Changer. Ordinary voice changers didn't sound natural, and most of them were the same, which made it very easy for people to recognize them. But this voice changer was very powerful, enough to pass off the fake as the real thing. After activating the voice changer, Loopy Toad directly pressed the voice button and recorded a message. Little brother, do you want to see my legs? Then, it let go. That originally deep voice instantly turned into a soft and cute girl's voice. Little Silver's heart trembled, and he felt his beast blood boil. In the next moment, the fairy, on the other side actually directly sent him a flash image. Little Silver knew that flash images couldn't be saved, and could only be looked at for 5 seconds before they were automatically deleted. And most of the time, flash images were used to send explosive content. Little Silver swallowed and clicked on the flash image. Then, a dog leg covered in green fur appeared in front of him. Chapter 424. Little Silver stared at the screen, lost in deep thought for a long time. For some reason, he felt like he had seen this green dog leg somewhere before. After going through a long cycle of reflexes, Little Silver finally understood. This lackey, wasn't it Master's dog? As expected, have I been cheated? Little Silver felt his holy beast heart hurt. What was righteousness? What was love? Where was the basic trust between beasts? On the sofa, Little Silver looked up at the ceiling and roared in despair in his heart as tears streamed down his cheeks. At that moment, the villa door opened. When Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal returned home, he saw the silver-haired young man pounding the ground and crying bitterly. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was startled by this scene. Brother Little Silver, you. He had just returned from delivering a ring, and hadn't expected to see this scene. Little Silver raised his head, sparkling and translucent tears streaking down his snow-white face, which made people feel pity for him. I'm jilted. Actually, it wasn't just about falling out of love. Being cheated was the key. But no matter what, Little Silver couldn't open his mouth, because as a holy beast, he had actually been flirted with by a dog. If this matter were to spread out, it would be too embarrassing. Although he didn't know what was going on, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal still walked over and patted Little Silver on the shoulder comfortingly. Brother Little Silver, there's a first time for everything, get over it. When a person was extremely sad, the more they were comforted, the louder they might cry. Little Silver was naturally the same. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal let go of her, a little at a loss. If he had known this would happen, he wouldn't have comforted her. It had been a drizzle when they had just entered, now it was a storm. Ignoring the crying Little Silver, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal turned to the bathroom to get a wash basin and put it in front of Little Silver. Little Silver looked at him with tears streaming down his face. What are you doing? Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal smiled. Catch the tears. The sacred beast's tears have medicinal value, so don't waste them. Little Silver. A few seconds later, Little Silver sniffled and cried even more miserably with a wah. Why is the whole world targeting me, Little Silver? On the other side, Wang Ling had watched the entire process of Loopy Toad teasing Little Silver. He could already imagine how little Silver had gone from the moment he had mistakenly thought that he had added a little sister, from the moment he had been wild with joy to the moment he was now on the verge of collapse, as his emotions had fluctuated like a roller coaster. Actually, he hadn't been idle during this time. He had downloaded the mock midterm exam papers from last year and the year before in the class group file. This year's questions would definitely be different, and Teacher Pan had already said earlier that they would be much more difficult. No teacher would be stupid enough to copy the exam questions exactly as they had been in the past. However, even if he knew that the difficulty of this year's exam had increased, the exam papers from last year and the year before were still useful as a reference. He was now trying to cross out 90% of the questions that he wouldn't get tested on, and then sort out the ones that might make the exam more difficult. For example, in the midterm paper of the Talisman course, the question asked about the synthesis formula of the flame reaction of the Buddha's fiery lotus last year and the year before that. This question would definitely not be asked again this year. Another example was in the social studies course, where there was a discussion about a popular cartoon that had been reported by the public and taken off the shelves without a clear classification system for domestic cartoons. Wang Ling's intuition told him that this question would probably be tested this year, and it definitely wouldn't just be a discussion question worth 10 points. It was very likely that it would be upgraded to a 25-point essay in the social studies course, and the student would have to write an essay of 1,000 words or less. That was because the same thing had actually happened recently. Wang Ling remembered that a few days ago, Dopey Gua had told him that a horror novel that he liked very much had been reported to have been taken off the shelves. He had heard that it was because the results were too good, and the jealous peers had reported it to have been taken off the shelves. This was actually a common occurrence in the news, but because similar incidents were at the top of the trending topics, they were infinitely magnified. Wang Ling silently made a mark on the side of this question as a key review topic. Of course, Wang Ling's focus wasn't on how high his score would be, but on summarizing and sorting out the questions that might be tested one by one, and then figuring out how much more difficult they would be this year. Then, he would combine the average scores of last year and the year before that to guess this year's average score. For Wang Ling, average scores were the key. If he got too high or too bad, Father Wang would dock his pocket money. About 5 minutes later, he was done summarizing and sorting. Wang Ling looked at the time. It was already 7:00 in the evening. It had been almost 7 hours since Daoist Guang had received the computer. The notebook that grenade-throwing senior immortal had bought for the elderly could already be considered a fairly simple one, and the tutorials inside were easy to understand and very detailed. Wang Ling wondered how Daoist Guang was doing now. Just as he was thinking this, he suddenly felt his wristwatch vibrate. It was a private chat from grenade-throwing senior immortal. "Brother Ling. Are you there? Come quickly. Senior Daoist Guang is online." Because it was grenade-throwing senior immortal who had registered the chat account, it was also bound to his other cell phone number, so as soon as Daoist Guang went online, grenade-throwing senior immortal's cell phone would immediately receive a text notification. After receiving the private chat from grenade-throwing senior immortal, Wang Ling opened the three of them private group, and sure enough, he found that Daoist Guang's chat profile picture had already changed from gray to color, which was proof that Daoist Guang was online. "Senior Guang? Daoist Guang?" Grenade-throwing senior immortal tried at. "This old man is here." It took Daoist Guang 3 minutes to reply with just 3 words. It was very obvious that this was a very difficult learning path. "Is the computer working?" Grenade-throwing senior immortal sent a grinning emoji. After another 5 minutes, Daoist Guang replied, "It's working." "This old man, typing, is slow." Grenade-throwing senior immortal couldn't help laughing. "Actually, senior can try using voice." Another 3 minutes, Daoist Guang, "No, noisy." After that, Daoist Guang tried using voice input. After listening to it, grenade-throwing senior immortal found that there was indeed a lot of noise inside. Only then did he remember that Wang Ling seemed to have told him before that Daoist Guang's soul space was an island with the ebb and flow of tides and the sound of rolling waves, as well as all kinds of insects and birds in the rainforest. However, this wasn't an unsolvable problem. Grenade-throwing senior immortal swiftly recovered. How about this, Senior? I'll have Brother Ling burn a recording studio for you later. Wang Ling. Chapter 425. He thought it was a little exaggerated to directly burn down a recording studio. Furthermore, a recording studio with good soundproofing actually cost a lot of money. Of course, money might not be a problem for grenade-throwing Senior Immortal at all, but if he really wanted to burn down a recording studio, it would definitely be a spectacular scene. Daoist Guang could only blame himself for typing too slowly, and it seemed like he wouldn't be able to type fast in a short period of time. The only way was to familiarize himself with the keys on the keyboard and practice typing. Generally, people who were good at typing basically typed blindly. Is there any other way? Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal asked in the group. Slow typing speed was indeed a problem. Without voice input, it would take an average of 1 minute to type a word. This was too tiring. Wang Ling stared at the screen and pondered. He had just wondered whether he should enchant a keyboard and send it to Daoist Guang. That way, Daoist Guang would only need to say what he wanted to type. He didn't even need voice input for the keyboard to move on its own. 3 minutes later, Daoist Guang replied, "Yes, wait." Wang Ling and grenade-throwing Senior Immortal waited quietly, completely unaware of what method Daoist Guang would use. After another 10 minutes or so, Daoist Guang finally replied, "Gentlemen, I'm ready." Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal didn't know if it was an illusion, but he felt that Daoist Guang's typing speed had really increased a lot. Daoist Guang typed swiftly. Now, this old man can already communicate normally. Senior Ling and little friend grenade-throwing, don't worry. Wang Ling and grenade-throwing Senior Immortal were very surprised. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, how did Senior Daoist Guang do it? I just thought of this method. Daoist Guang replied. This old man mainly cultivated the water magic, and I'm not bragging. I can say that I've already reached the pinnacle of water magic. Wang Ling nodded in front of the screen. He indeed wasn't bragging. To be able to create an island space like this and integrate one's soul into it, this indeed wasn't something an ordinary person could do. Furthermore, it was very obvious that Daoist Guang had meticulously designed this island space. It was surrounded by the sea not only for the sake of aesthetics, but also to nourish and stabilize the soul. In order to set up such an island space, Daoist Guang's water spells had to be at least at the peak of grade 8. Furthermore, Wang Ling judged that it was very likely that Daoist Guang would be able to cast grade 9 water spells. Although most of the perfected immortals in the perfected immortal realm could cultivate up to the 8th stage, it wasn't as if there were no perfected immortals who could cast 9th stage transcendent spells. Of course, given Daoist Guang's current state as a soul, it would be very difficult for him to unleash level 8 soul power. If he was at his peak, he might have a chance. Now that things had come to this point, Daoist Guang couldn't be bothered to beat around the bush and directly revealed the truth. Just now, I used a level 6 water spell in the space, the aquatic beast form spell. Aquatic beast form formula. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal vaguely felt like he had heard of this spell before. Senior, may I ask if this spell can turn you into a sea spirit beast? Not bad. Across the screen, Daoist Guang nodded and typed quickly. But I rarely use this spell, because my beast form is very ugly. Just now, my beast form was the deep sea spirit octopus, and now I have almost 100 tentacles typing on the keyboard. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, Wang Ling. Moreover, there's another big problem. After using this technique, although my typing speed becomes faster, it's still very slow. But the keyboard will be sticky. Do you have any cleaning tools? Burn some for me. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal couldn't help laughing. Senior, you can wash it directly with water. This elderly phone I bought for you is completely waterproof. Daoist Guang nodded. Oh, good. That's fine. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, then can we start now? Of course, this is what I promised. Daoist Guang laughed and replied, then, let's start with the Immortal's treasure house. Staring at the screen, Wang Ling's expression turned a little more serious. Actually, when it comes to discovering the entrance to the Immortal's treasure house, it actually has something to do with the Gate Between Worlds. The Gate Between Worlds is a world-defying magic weapon created by Immortal Jinyuan, and has been modified 20 times, so it goes without saying how powerful it is. Ever since news of the Immortal's treasure house leaked out, countless cultivators have searched all over the world for it, but to no avail. I did a little research online before. So far, even in an age where science and technology are so advanced, no one has been able to find the whereabouts of the treasure house by combining cultivation techniques with technology. No one has even been able to find Immortal Jinyuan's shadow. So at that time, I've been thinking about a question. Could Immortal Jinyuan have hidden the Immortal's treasure house in the Gate Between Worlds? As soon as Daoist Guang said this, both Wang Ling and grenade-throwing Senior Immortal were instantly very interested. Actually, it wasn't impossible for the situation to be as Daoist Guang said. Because theoretically speaking, the Immortal's treasure house that Immortal Jinyuan had created was a great world that contained all his wealth and his life, and such a great world usually had to rely on a world-defying magic weapon. For example, this method was a little like another magic treasure that Immortal Jinyuan had invented, the purple gold gourd. The difference was that the purple gold gourd was just a holy weapon, and the world hidden inside it was also a small world. Only divine weapons and world-defying magic weapons could contain a large world. So here was the problem. The purple gold gourd had been invented for the sake of a small world from the very beginning. It was originally a spatial storage magic weapon. But the purpose of the Gate Between Worlds which Immortal Jinyuan had invented was clearly very different. The Gate Between Worlds was more like a link between the human world and the demon world. If you had to categorize it, it could only be classified as a spatial teleportation magic weapon. One was storage, the other was teleportation. The difference was too big. Wang Ling wasn't the only one who had thought of this problem. After grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had also thought of it, he immediately sorted it out and raised this question. Actually, I also thought of the problem you were thinking of back then. So after that, I spent a lot of time traveling through the Gate Between Worlds. I always wondered if Immortal Jinyuan had embedded the great world of the Immortal's treasure house in the demon world, and it might have appeared in some corner of the demon world in the form of a secret land. As he typed, Taoist Guang recalled this past event in his mind. But unfortunately, when I searched the demon world back then, I didn't find any clues about the Immortal's treasure house. It wasn't until I was leaving the Gate Between Worlds that I met someone. Who was it? Asked grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. You might not know this person, but you're definitely familiar with his senior brother. Taoist Guang typed, his senior brother is General Yi, one of the 10 founding generals of Huaxiu Nation. General Yi has a junior brother? Taoist Guang nodded. This person is evil sword god Chen Nanxian, known as the 10-meter sword god, in the current cultivation world. This time, there are 3 more chapters to update, 2 of which are for little sister, Dreamfall Mushi. This time, there's absolutely no mistake. _3. Chapter 426. The name Chen Nanxian was too unfamiliar to him. Nowadays, people in the cultivation circle basically called each other by their Daoist names, and many people ignored their real names. This Chen Nanxian was a classic example. He didn't recognize his name, but when it came to the titles, 10-meter sword god, and evil sword god, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was instantly enlightened. It was actually him. In front of the screen, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had a stunned expression on his face. Because this evil sword god's history was even more terrifying than the old devil's. Everything he did was shocking, but the ripples he caused weren't as strong as the old devil's. Back then, when the old devil had led the Gua Pai army to invade the National Palace, the media had exaggerated the story and later classified it as a massive terrorist attack. Thanks to modern cultivation technology, the whole nation knew about it when the media reported it, but the title of Evil Sword God didn't leave a deep impression on modern people. At Evil Sword God's time, the construction of the Spirit Energy Information System had just started, and it was actually incomplete. It was clearly far from enough to rely solely on the power of the paper media. Even the first time grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had come into contact with this evil sword god was when he flipped through the old newspaper archive managed by the Cultivation Library in Songhai City. At the time, he had been investigating other incidents when he happened to see the old newspaper about this evil sword god. Grenade-throwing senior immortal clearly remembered that the newspaper had published all three of evil sword god's crimes at the time. The first was the hostage case. In the first incident, evil sword god had still stood on the side of justice, but the media had clearly put double quotation marks around this justice. Because evil sword god's justice was what he believed to be righteous, the hostage case that had shocked the cultivation circle back then fully demonstrated this point. At the time, Huaxiao Nation had just been founded, and domestic security measures weren't comprehensive, so there were still some cultivators who broke the law. At the time, someone had robbed a bank and taken everyone in the bank hostage. Sword in hand, evil sword god had charged in alone and killed all the robbers. He had also wiped out the hostages who had been involved in the incident. Evil sword god believed that cowards didn't have the right to live in this world. The second was the murder of his Shifu. Grenade-throwing senior immortal had been completely baffled by the report on this incident, because the newspaper at the time hadn't been very detailed, and it had taken up the least amount of space. But combined with the clues provided by Daoist Guang, Grenade-throwing senior immortal instantly understood something. In this shift-killing case, the person evil sword god had killed wasn't just his own Shifu, but also General Yi's Shifu. News like this that involved the meritorious generals of the founding of the country would definitely be restricted. Grenade-throwing senior immortal hadn't understood at the time, but now that he thought about it, he understood everything. As for the third case, it was the revenge case. After the first two major incidents, evil sword god's reputation in the cultivation circle had plummeted. In an era of the rule of law, modern society increasingly disapproved of this sort of tyranny. Flustered and exasperated, evil sword god Chen Nanxian resolved to take revenge. That night, evil sword god killed all the media people who had exposed him, and then disappeared in an atmosphere of terror. In the three-person chat group, Grenade-throwing senior immortal recounted this period of history, but this history had also been blocked because it had to do with evil sword. There was no information on evil sword god online. It was either 404 or inaccessible, and a lot of information and content had already been blocked. After all, this had all happened 2,000 or 3,000 years ago, at the beginning of Huaxiao Nation's founding. And most importantly, this incident also involved General Yi. Naturally, no media outlet would have the guts to use General Yi, one of the 10 founding generals, as a source of entertainment hype. Hearing news about evil sword god again after 1,000 years, Grenade-throwing senior immortal's heart was in turmoil for a very long time, and he couldn't be more shocked. Evil sword god is actually still alive? As he typed these words, his heart trembled. As great death-courting senior in the cultivation circle, he felt that he already had nothing to fear, even if it was power or threats. The reason why people in the cultivation circle valued Grenade-throwing senior immortal was precisely because he wasn't afraid of power and had a straightforward personality. But when it came to evil sword god, Grenade-throwing senior immortal realized that his body couldn't stop trembling. Back then, out of curiosity, he had inadvertently read news about evil sword god, and from a small channel, he had found videos of evil sword god's battles. Even though these videos had already been censored, they were still vivid in Grenade-throwing senior immortal's mind. After the murder of his Shifu, evil sword god was listed as Huaxiao Nation's most wanted criminal, and the government issued a heavenly Dao bounty order. Soul formation experts went after him wave after wave, but he easily beheaded them and sent them to the national palace. Anyone with a discerning eye would know that this was provocation and contempt. However, in the face of absolute strength, evil sword god was too terrifying. Daoist Guang understood Grenade-throwing senior immortal's feelings very well. He was older than Grenade-throwing senior immortal, and naturally understood how terrifying that period of time was, as it was called, the Black Era. He was someone who had lived through that era. After the Black Terror back then, it had a widespread influence that lasted for no less than 100 years. It was only in Wang Ling's generation that this dusty history gradually faded from public view. Now that it was brought up again, even Daoist Guang's heart was still a little unsettled. 100 years after evil sword god Chen Nanxian faded from public view back then, no matter how many cultivators Huaxiao Nation sent out to search for him, no one could find him. As for me, I met him face to face in the gate between worlds. How did it end? Grenade-throwing senior immortal was curious. Daoist Guang shook his head and sighed. I ran into him at the exit of a space in the gate between worlds. We exchanged blows, but in the end, I fled. How could that be? Grenade-throwing senior immortal found it hard to believe. I launched a fierce attack with 8th grade water magic, but evil sword god set up a barrier and easily blocked it, not budging an inch. Daoist Guang's heart trembled as he typed this. Furthermore, his sword isn't an ordinary object, it's precisely the heaven-cleaving sword he seized from his Shifu, Sword Immortal Fan Rui. This is the most powerful godly sword in the current spiritual sword ranking list. Seeing Daoist Guang's words on the screen, Wang Ling subconsciously looked at Jinka. However, Taoist Guang wasn't done yet. Not only that, when I fought him, I could already sense that he had already mastered Sword Dao, one of the 3,000 great spells. Although he hadn't fully cultivated it back then, its power was already terrifying. Grenade-throwing senior immortal was astonished. 3,000 great spells. That's right. 3,000 great Daos. Daoist Guang said, at true immortal level, if you can master one Dao, it's already enough to look down on the world and transcend the mortal world. If you can master 2, or even 3. I'm afraid that only legendary existences like Immortal Zhenyuan can do this. In this world, there is no one who can completely master the 3,000 great spells. Wang Ling. Chapter 427. Wang Ling felt that there was probably no one in the world who had a more thorough understanding of the 3,000 great spells than he did. From the moment he was born, his memories of the 3,000 great spells had been pieced together in his mind like a jigsaw puzzle. By the time he was 5, the map of the 3,000 great spells had already taken shape, and was 60% complete. As early as when he was 10 years old, this memory puzzle of the 3,000 great Dao had already been completed. It was like a dusty memory that he was born with, slowly recovering as he grew older. The 3,000 great Daos were not skills. They were rules that were related to the truth of all things in the world. In the cultivation world, they were called rules. In fact, the heavenly Dao that Daoist Guang had said he wanted to pursue and the heavenly Dao that Grenade-throwing senior immortal often talked about was actually the 3,000 great spells. However, it was not easy for even a true immortal to grasp a law. Daoist Guang couldn't help sighing in his heart as he waved his hundreds of tentacles and typed quickly. How great would it have been if I had mastered one of the 3,000 great spells back then? If you want to get through the samsara spirit tribulation, you won't need to rely on such a tortuous method at all. You can completely choose to force your way through. Speaking up to this point, Taoist Guang couldn't help slapping his thigh. What a pity, he was too stupid. Even Grenade-throwing senior immortal couldn't help laughing as he typed. That's why I've always felt that comprehending the heavenly Dao is something that can only be encountered by chance, and can't be sought. But it's not too late, Senior Daoist Guang. There are a lot of great seniors in Brother Ling's house. Sometimes I often get new inspirations at Brother Ling's house. You're in Brother Ling's ring now, and you can come out once in a while when your spirit power is full. Take advantage of these 5 minutes to comprehend and learn more. Who knows, you might succeed. It was as if Daoist Guang had met his soulmate, and he was very excited as he wiped his tears and typed, "Don't call me senior. From now on, you and I are brothers." Grenade-throwing senior immortal sent a teary smile emoji. Then what should I call you? Brother Guang? Ah, Guang? Just call me Brother Guang. You're welcome. I'll call you Brother Grenade-throwing from now on. Daoist Guang replied. Looking at the screen, the corners of Wang Ling's mouth couldn't help twitching. This speed was too fast. Actually, there were times when Wang Ling really envied Grenade-throwing senior immortal's social skills. Although Grenade-throwing senior immortal was called Great Death-courting Senior in the cultivation circle, who didn't know that this Great Death-courting Senior was a famous social butterfly in the cultivation circle. Otherwise, it really wouldn't be possible for him to run such a large cultivation forum. which mainly discussed gossip and ridiculed scandals all year round, if he didn't have any connections in the cultivation circle. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, the next time Brother Ling burns something for Senior, I'll have him burn some broccoli for Brother Guang. This was the broccoli that Senior Wang had planted. I stared at it for 10 minutes every day, and I felt that it was very rewarding. It might even help me comprehend the heavenly Tao. Taoist Guang, really? Then I'll have to trouble Brother Grenade-throwing to burn it for me to appraise. Seeing this, Wang Ling finally couldn't help sending an ellipsis. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal realized that he had gone off topic, and hurriedly tried to change the subject. Cough cough. Brother Guang, we can discuss this in private later. Right now, Evil Sword God is more important. Can we continue talking about what happened after we met him? Of course. Taoist Guang nodded and quickly replied, when I fought Evil Sword God at that time, I didn't even get 2 moves before I knew the outcome. This person's evil nature was even more terrifying than the rumors said. He was surrounded by a mass of sword chi formed from sword Dao, and I couldn't get close at all. I could only use long-range spells to cast obstacle spells as I escaped. If it wasn't for the unfathomable level of my water magic, I would have been cut down by his heaven-cleaving sword long ago. Now that I think about it, it really was a disgrace. Ever since I cultivated to true immortal realm, I've never been in such a sorry state that I had to rely on a water clone to escape in the end. For Taoist Guang, this was the most shameful duel of his life. But now that I think about it carefully, it seemed that he wasn't in the mood to fight me, and was instead looking for something. He only sent a clone to chase me down. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, and then, Brother Guang? Later, I deliberately faked my death at his clone's hands in an attempt to divert his attention. Evil Sword God might be powerful, but he wanted to use just one clone to chase me down. It can only be said that this person's character is just as the rumors say, arrogant, conceited, and pretentious. Taoist Guang said, after that, I didn't dare act rashly. Instead, I sent out several water clones to look for Evil Sword God in his previous position. Later, when this old man found him again, he was walking towards a cave that had just been opened. He walked out of the gate between worlds. As everyone knew, the gate between worlds had a time limit of 5 years in the outside world. If one didn't descend on their own initiative but was summoned through a magic array, it would have to cool down for 5 years before it could be summoned again. If one wanted to get out of the gate between worlds, apart from knowing when the gate opened, one of the ways to do so was to find small space openings hidden inside the gate. As long as one could find these small space openings, one could be spat out into the outside world. But Taoist Guang shook his head. No. Evil Sword God didn't go out, he typed. There are a lot of small holes in the gate between worlds that can spit people out into the outside world. Immortal Zhenyuan probably deliberately designed them inside. They look random, but in fact there's a certain regularity to them. In my travels in the demon world over the years, I ran into them no less than 100 times, so I'm very familiar with them. The one that Evil Sword God entered was clearly different from the others. After the water clone I sent out saw Evil Sword God enter the hole actually disappeared at a speed visible to the naked eye. After that, I successfully entered the hole, but relying on the power of the water clone alone, I was completely unable to withstand the tearing power of the space inside the hole, and it didn't take long before it turned into a pile of bubbles. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, Wang Ling, Taoist Guang. But before he turned into bubbles, I saw Evil Sword God step into another space with my own eyes. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, another space? Taoist Guang nodded his head. That's right. If we view the gate between worlds as a transmission link between the human realm and the demon realm, then in the middle of this transmission link, there's an unknown spatial entrance. If I'm not wrong, that spatial entrance is the entrance to the Immortal's treasury. But it's very clear that the space entrance Evil Sword God entered isn't opened at will, and can only be opened when certain special conditions are met. I call that special spatial cavern the Inner World Cavern. Wang Ling. Chapter 428. After Taoist Guang told them about his experience, the three of them fell into a long silence. To be honest, Daoist Guang didn't want to talk about it because it was too humiliating. They were both true immortals, but just because they were one nomological power apart, the gap between them was actually so huge. This was a situation that Daoist Guang had never expected. So after this incident, Daoist Guang worked hard to become stronger and thought of every way he could safely survive the samsara spirit tribulation. As long as he could break through to venerated immortal, he felt that he might be able to put up a fight. Furthermore, Daoist Guang had heard that as long as you became a venerated immortal, you would be able to grasp at least 2 or 3 nomological laws. With these, wouldn't a mere evil sword god be trampled on casually? But Daoist Guang hadn't expected that in the end, he would dig his own grave. His physical body had already been destroyed. Given the current situation, there was no way for him to return to his peak unless he could reforge his body or continue to experience the samsara spirit tribulation in this way. That's all I know about the Immortal's treasure vault. As for whether Evil Sword God found the Immortal's treasure house through the inner world entrance in the end, I didn't know. But if you think about it, this Immortal's treasure house probably won't be easy to find, Daoist Guang typed. Grenade throwing senior immortal, Brother Guang is right. Furthermore, it's been so long since your incident with Evil Sword God, and there's still no news of him in the last few hundred years. This is enough to prove that Evil Sword God is either still exploring the Immortal's treasure house or doing something else in the gate between worlds. Daoist Guang nodded. I'll leave the rest to Brother Grenade Throwing and Senior Ling, Grenade Throwing Senior Immortal, Brother Guang, don't worry, Brother Ling and I will definitely find a way to restore your body and return you to your peak. Daoist Guang laughed. There's no hurry, this old man has already waited for so many years, a little longer won't make much of a difference. Besides, didn't you burn a laptop for me? Grenade Throwing Senior Immortal, Brother Guang, if you're really bored, you can watch a live stream on a live streaming website, or download a game to play or something. Do you know PUBG? I can give you a number. It was as if Daoist Guang had opened the door to a whole new world. Chicken dinner? What's this? Grenade Throwing Senior Immortal, it's just a common name for a game. I can't explain it clearly in a short time. Later, I'll compile a document and send it to you along with my account. Brother Guang, you can play the game to pass the time. Also, if someone asks you if you want a plug-in, don't buy it. Just yesterday, there was a host nicknamed Baboon who was banned by the Focus interview program. Daoist Guang, no problem. Speaking up to this point, Daoist Guang patted his head and suddenly typed, wait a moment, I still have something. Please accept it, Senior Ling, it might be helpful in finding the Immortal's treasure house. Wang Ling sent a question mark. As always, his words were concise and comprehensive, without a word more. Very quickly, Wang Ling saw the soul suppression ring on his hand tremble slightly, and a ball of spirit light surged out. It was a gourd covered with talisman seals. The talisman seals were very tight, and there were 4 layers of true immortal seals. Daoist Guang said in the 3-person group, this is the sword chi that Evil Sword God left on my Daoist robe when he used his clone to hunt me down. This sword chi was really too evil. After I took off my Daoist robe and stored it in this 3rd-class holy weapon gourd, it didn't work. I had to add 4 more layers of seals before I was able to suppress this evil chi. Holding the gourd, Wang Ling sank into deep thought. He wanted to see how strong this evil chi was. He turned on the video function on his wristwatch, and Grenade Throwing Senior Immortal and Daoist Guang directly saw the video message in the 3-person chat group. In his familiar room, Wang Ling sat upright on his bed and casually dismantled the seals as if they were gauze. Grenade Throwing Senior Immortal couldn't help asking in the group, Brother Guang, are you sure this is a true immortal seal? Daoist Guang broke out in a sweat. That's right, Grenade Throwing Senior Immortal, why does your true immortal seal look fake? Daoist Guang was at a loss for words. How would he know? There were steps to dismantling any seal. Based on Daoist Guang's knowledge of the cultivation world, Daoist Guang should have thought of a way to dissolve the Dao talisman seal layer by layer. But this was the first time he had seen Wang Ling use such a crude method, which resembled delivery tape. but Taoist Guang felt that this indirectly confirmed his speculation about Wang Ling's true strength. To be able to tear open his true immortal seal so easily, Senior Ling's realm was definitely that of a venerated immortal. Furthermore, it was very likely that he had 2 or 3 nomological powers on him, which was why it had looked so easy to deal with. Wang Ling didn't say anything in front of the camera. After tearing open the true immortal seal, he pulled out the cork and turned the gourd upside down. A dark blue Taoist robe with black evil qi swirling around it quickly appeared in front of him. As Taoist Guang had said, this dark blue Taoist robe was already in tatters. There were dozens of marks on it where sword qi had pierced through it, and each of them was a fatal wound. Of course, the holes in the Taoist robe weren't the key point. The real key was the black evil qi which emanated from each hole. Wang Ling could sense the Great Sword Dao spell, of the 3,000 great spells, in the power that this black demonic qi gave off. That evil sword god had indeed mastered this nomological power, but it was very obvious that he wasn't very proficient in using it, and was a complete novice. Although Wang Ling didn't know what method this evil sword god had used to master this nomological power, since he was able to do so, he should pay a little more attention to this opponent than the previous ones. Furthermore, it had been a long time since Taoist Guang and evil sword god's collision. Wang Ling was suddenly a little curious about how far evil sword god had cultivated the nomological power of sword Dao over the past several hundred years. While Wang Ling cupped his chin in contemplation, the scattered black evil sword qi on the dark blue Taoist robe actually gathered together again in that moment. Brother Ling, be careful. Senior Ling, be careful. Taoist Guang and grenade-throwing senior immortals saw this scene at the same time and were about to warn Wang Ling, but it was already too late. This string of black sword qi gathered together so quickly that it was like a venomous snake lurking in the dark, suddenly baring its venomous fangs as it pierced through the air like a waterfall. It was aimed right at Wang Ling's heart. This sword qi was different from normal sword qi. It contained the nomological power of sword Dao from the Great Sword Dao spell. Although evil sword Dao hadn't fully cultivated this nomological power at the time, the sword qi which he had slashed out had unexpectedly already possessed a certain level of intelligence, and knew to attack after gathering together again. Wang Ling twisted his face. On the bed, Jinka had already moved at that moment. However, Wang Ling was faster than Jinka. He swiftly picked up the 3 years of college entrance examination, 5 years of simulation from the table, rolled it up into a stick, and with a bang, scattered this evil sword qi. Taoist Guang. Chapter 429. When grenade-throwing senior immortals saw Wang Ling brandish the 3-5 stick, he thought of the lyrics of a song, "This stick will turn you into ashes," and in fact, that was indeed the case. This scene was really too shocking, and Taoist Guang was directly dumbfounded in front of the screen, unable to say anything for a long time. This evil sword god sword Dao qi was so hard to deal with. Who knew that Wang Ling would directly scatter it like swatting a fly? After coming back to his senses, Taoist Guang had a very complicated expression on his face. It was one of amusement, astonishment, and horror. Taoist Guang, Senior Ling, may I ask what kind of operation this is? Wang Ling, in contrast to Taoist Guang, grenade-throwing senior immortal, looked as if he had seen the world, and his expression didn't change in the slightest. Brother Guang, don't be surprised, you'll be fine once you get used to it. After witnessing Wang Ling's godly operation of refining weapons in a microwave oven, the young man in white felt that when he saw other amazing operations, his heart would naturally be unperturbed. He couldn't predict how strong Wang Ling's realm was, but no matter what the situation was, in grenade-throwing senior immortal's heart, Wang Ling wasn't just a brother, but also an extraordinary person. In the past, the young man in white had always thought that the gap between him and Wang Ling was just a gap in strength. But now, he felt that he was far behind Wang Ling in every aspect. Thinking this, grenade-throwing senior immortal emotionally typed a string of heartfelt words in the group of 3. Sure enough, knowledge is power. Taoist Guang, Wang Ling. That night, Wang Ling didn't sleep as he thought about a lot of things. Wang Ling felt that Taoist Guang's reasoning indeed made sense, but in the end, it was just that, a deduction. As the gate between worlds that connected the human world and the demon world, Wang Ling felt that he had to personally verify whether there were other entrances hidden in the transmission link between them. He had to investigate the Immortal's treasure house. In his current list of plans, the importance of investigating the Immortal's treasure house was second only to the upcoming midterm exams. But he couldn't remember this for now, and would need to think about it at length. Furthermore, he wasn't pinning all his hopes of suppressing his power on this Immortal's treasure house. This treasure house contained a lot of Immortal Jinyuan's treasures, but whether or not there were any magic treasures that could help him control his strength was another matter. If it was possible, he hoped that one day he would be able to find a way to suppress his strength without the help of any magic treasures. Or perhaps, there was no need to suppress it. If he could adapt to this power, that would be for the best. However, from the current situation, these were just wishful thinking. Wang Ling got up early in the morning. He packed up Daoist Guang's tattered Daoist robe and had Sheep help deliver it to grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's house. The evil sword Dao Qi on this tattered Daoist robe had already been completely removed, but there was still a trace of sword Qi left behind. This was the normal sword Qi left behind by the heaven-cleaving sword. Actually, a lot of it had already dissipated, but Wang Ling could still sense it. After the conversation in the three-person chat group yesterday, Wang Ling and grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had discussed in private whether they could use modern space detection technology to trace the heaven-cleaving sword's position using the trace of sword Qi left behind on this tattered Daoist robe. In theory, Wang Ling felt that this method was feasible. However, he would have to leave the detection to Wang Ming. But it just so happened that it was Monday, and Wang Ling had to go to school. Thus, after Sheep delivered the Daoist robe to grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal would have to run the rest of the detection work himself. If Evil Sword God was still lingering in that other world, then as long as Wang Ling tracked down the heaven-cleaving sword, he would be able to find that other world where Evil Sword God was. Even if that other world didn't exist, Wang Ling felt that finding Evil Sword God himself would be excellent. It was July 10th on Monday in the 12th week of the semester. Wang Ling arrived at the classroom as usual, and as usual, there was a lot of noise from Super Chen and Dopey Gua. Wang Ling was a little stunned to realize that these two guys were actually watching the live stream on their phones. It was the critical juncture of the midterm exams, and students either didn't bring smart communication devices like cell phones and wristwatches with them, or turned them off when they entered school. If they were discovered, their phones would be confiscated or their parents would be called in. Teacher Pan had never been ambiguous in this regard. But even so, there would always be one or two people in every class who ignored her advice, and the two, Heng and Ha duo, in grade 1, class 3 were none other than Super Chen and Dopey Gua. To be honest, their grades weren't bad, they were above average, but their usual style of study had always been to be mischievous whenever they could, which gave Teacher Pan a headache. Seeing a figure flash past the classroom door, Dopey Gua and Super Chen were so scared that they almost dropped their phones. Holy shit! It's you, Wang Ling. I was scared to death. I thought it was old Pan. Dopey Gua screamed. Wang Ling, after collecting the homework from the first row, Little Peanut stood on the side with a helpless expression on his face. Both of you, be a little more careful. Teacher Pan has been coming early in the morning for the last 2 weeks, and I heard that there are teachers patrolling outside the classroom recently. It's fine, it's fine. Riches come from the skin. Master of Dopey waved his hand lightly. Wang Ling, Little Peanut, by the way, what are you looking at? You're so excited early in the morning. Dopey Gua, an old man's live stream. Last night at 10:00 on the Cultivation live streaming platform, his ID is Lord Island, very interesting. Little Peanut, what's the live stream about? Super Chen answered, survival on a deserted island. Furthermore, Lord Island is currently living on a deserted island overseas, and it's been daytime since the live stream started last night. It's probably surrounded by water, and you can hear the sound of waves during the live stream. Wang Ling felt that Super Chen's description sounded a little familiar. He quietly leaned over to take a look at the screen, and saw Daoist Guang interacting with the audience like a peach blossom. Wang Ling dropped his forehead into his hand and felt his head hurt a little. At that moment, Dopigwa said, when I was strolling around yesterday, I saw Lord Island driving a coconut, and there were only a few hundred viewers at that time. Little Peanut asked casually, what about now? Dopigwa, it's already broken through 1 million. Wang Ling, Little Peanut was also startled. What the hell? Super Chin, also, Lord Island used the island's mineral resources to refine a big pot with a fire spell just now. Dopigwa turned up the volume on his phone and turned the screen to face the other onlookers. Wang Ling saw countless, 666, floating through the bullet messages. The sound of the waves was very loud. Although Daoist Guang couldn't use voice to recognize words in such a noisy environment with this old edition of the laptop, the audience in the live stream room could still distinguish Daoist Guang's voice with the help of a sound amplification spell. At that moment, Daoist Guang was standing in the iron pot, which was filled with seawater, facing the laptop's camera. He shouted excitedly to his 1 million viewers, brothers, give me 666. Next, Lord Island will bring you the latest talent show, Iron Pot. Stew yourself. Wang Ling. Chapter 430. The live streaming industry in the cultivation world was in fact very prosperous at the moment, and there were all kinds of live streams emerging in an endless stream. But while there were many people in any industry, there were very few who could truly make it to the top. Some small live streamers might have been live streaming for more than half a year, but they might only have accumulated a pitiful few thousand fans. Wang Ling calculated the time. It should have been around 9 o'clock after their 3-day chat group meeting yesterday. Then, in less than an hour, Daoist Guang had come into contact with live streaming, which could even be considered a completely new form of entertainment for him. Actually, Wang Ling quite understood Daoist Guang. After all, he had been alone in the soul space for so long. At the beginning, he had been full of ambition to cross the samsara spirit tribulation and find the fated person, but now, he had seen through everything and wanted a body in exchange for freedom. To put it bluntly, it was all because of loneliness. Interacting with others through live streaming was in fact a good way to relieve loneliness. Daoist Guang had only just come into contact with live streaming, and his initial thought was probably just to find some people to keep him company. But in less than 12 hours, the number of viewers in the live stream room had directly broken 1 million, which was something that many live streamers couldn't imagine. Wang Ling didn't know if Daoist Guang had any concept of live stream popularity, but in some sense, he had already made history this year. The number of people in the live stream room kept increasing at a visible rate. When the number of viewers reached a certain level, such as 100,000 or 200,000, the intensity of the broadcast would continue to soar as the number of viewers continued to increase. The ID, Lord Island, which Daoist Guang had registered on the Cultivation live streaming platform was a new one that had never appeared on the platform before. The registration date was public, so a lot of people at first mistakenly thought that some big live streamer had registered a smurf account in collusion with his fans and the live streaming website. In the end, it wasn't until they clicked on it that they realized this wasn't the case, because this was an outdoor live stream, and the most important thing was that the live streamer was an old man in white, barefoot, who had the air of an immortal. We're witnessing the birth of a legendary live streamer. Super Chen and Dopigwa were also excited as they watched the live stream room's popularity soar. It seems that there haven't been any phenomenal live streamers this year. I never thought that this Lord Island, who came out of nowhere, would actually become so popular. Little Peanut was so amazed that he even forgot to collect his homework. This live stream's popularity had been 1 million just now, but in the time it took to say a few words, it had already broken 1.5 million. How terrifying! The number of viewers increased, and the bullet screen became abnormally terrifying. If there was no limit on the bullet screen would have become a sea of bullets, blocking the entire live stream. From 666,233 at the beginning, there were now more and more fancy bullet messages. Since Lord Island's performance of stewing himself in an iron wok, the bullet messages had completely exploded. Stewing yourself in an iron pot, stewing 1 million people. Lord Island is awesome. Almighty bullet screen. Does anyone know which island the host is on? Lord Island looks like an immortal, He must be an expert. Please give me your Taoist name. A lot of people had only thought it was interesting at first, but now they were frantically following Lord Island's live stream room and starting to pay attention to the old man's identity. Standing in the pot, Daoist Guang saw more and more questions on the bullet message. Of course, he wasn't stupid. There was no way he would actually reveal his Daoist name, Daoist Guang. He hadn't even completed authenticating his real name, so the live stream room couldn't give out large amounts of gifts. On the same day, an ID could only give him a maximum of 10 HNY, although there were already some nouveau riche fans who couldn't take it anymore in the bullet message. But from the very beginning, Daoist Guang had just wanted to have fun. Don't panic, everyone. Let me set up the fan ID. If you're interested in me, just get your fan ID. Standing in the pot, Daoist Guang stretched out his hand to set up the fan ID, and very quickly set it to 3 words, Chaser of the Light, I can't take it anymore. Gift. It was Dopigua's phone. After seeing Lord Island put up the fan ID, he immediately chose to gift him 10 HNY to get the fan ID. 1 HNY was 100 fan points, and 10 HNY was 1000 fan points. This was the minimum requirement for a fan ID. The gift limit was originally a measure taken by live streaming platforms to encourage live streamers to authenticate their real names. Generally, live streaming platforms had a back-end system that could connect to the Ministry of Public Security's back-end data for live streamers who had authenticated their real names. Live streaming platforms would usually refuse to sign on live streamers with tainted records, such as the live streamer who had been banned a few days ago, Baboon. But for live streamers who did it purely for entertainment and didn't care about profit at all, this gift limit mechanism was useless. Probably even the platforms themselves hadn't expected a new live streamer called Lord Island to explode in popularity overnight. 10 HNY was a small amount, but the number of viewers was huge. A gift of 10 HNY per person was a considerable profit for the platform. Less than 10 minutes after Daoist Guang set up the fan ID, hundreds of thousands of people had already gifted him and become Chasers of the Light. Super Chen couldn't help taking out his phone to gift Daoist Guang. I also want to become a Chaser of the Light. Wang Ling. At that moment, Wang Ling saw various bullet messages revolving around the Chaser of the Light fan ID in the bullet messages, Iron Pot of Light, Refining Weapons of Light, Survival of the Light, and so on. Little Peanut scared. What kind of person do you think this Lord Island is? Lord Island's identity is mysterious, but I think he might be at the soul formation stage. Super Chin guessed. Little Peanut scared again. Do soul formation seniors nowadays all pursue spiritual entertainment like this? Shouldn't they be like General E, who has nothing better to do and water the flowers or something? Furthermore, General E is a legendary true immortal. Super Chen laughed. Do you think everyone's realm is as high as General Yi's? If you really reach the true immortal realm and comprehend the mystery of being one with nature, you definitely won't feel lonely. In any case, I think this Lord Island is pretty interesting. Wang Ling. At that moment, Dopigua suddenly exclaimed, Lord Island said he's going to live stream chicken dinner at noon today. Super Chen, chicken dinner of the light? Dopigua, this is chicken time. Wang Ling, Little Peanut. Chapter 431. School ended a little late that day, because the people who had been watching Daoist Guang's live stream with Dopigua in the morning had all been detained. Not only that, they had also implicated almost the entire class. Taking advantage of the time after school, Teacher Pan focused her fire on Super Chen and Dopigua, these two mischievous gods who had a mischievous is healthier learning attitude all year round, and held an hour-long denunciation meeting. There was only one person who Teacher Pan let go early as an exception, and that was Lotus Sunday. Actually, the students in the class could understand, Teacher Pan couldn't afford to provoke a young miss of this level at all. What impressed Wang Ling the most was that after seeing Lotus Sun off with a smile on her face, Teacher Pan's expression immediately changed when she returned to the classroom. It could be said that she changed faces faster than one could turn the page of a book. Furthermore, Teacher Pan specially explained why she had let Lotus Sun go early. Student Lotus Sun has good grades, never messes around, and is obedient and sensible. Furthermore, she personally called me to explain the situation, otherwise I wouldn't have let her go so easily, even if it was Student Lotus Sun. Am I, Pan Xing Song, the kind of person who would bow down to the rich and powerful? This time, Wang Ling heard the students in the class say in unison, yes. The days were very long in Songhai City in July. It was almost 6:30 when Wang Ling left the school gates, but the sky was still bright and there wasn't even a sunset glow to be seen. Wang Ling followed Super Chen and Dopigua, and heard the two of them grumbling as they walked. Dopigua, this old Pan, she really doesn't give us any face. She's definitely the worst teacher in charge I've ever seen in my 16 years at school. Now that she's taken our phones, I'm afraid we won't be able to get them back. Super Chen chuckled. Isn't it just over 90 marks in each subject? What's so great about that? Let old Pan take a look at the results. Dopigua was startled. Since when have you been so ambitious? Super Chen, actually, if you think about it carefully, while old Pan has her flaws, it's not easy. She's been in charge of so many elite classes, but none of them rank well in the district. People inside and outside the school gossip about her behind her back, but she doesn't care at all, and insists on being the first one to come to school every morning. Speaking up to this point, Dopigua was a little silent, because what Super Chen said was true. There was no doubt about Teacher Pan's professionalism. Super Chen, also, think about it, during the Shuego sect incident last time, old Pan was busy contacting her parents for so many days, but you never saw her complain about anything. She's usually quite domineering, but she also has her merits. Dopigua frowned slightly. Now that you mention it, it doesn't seem unreasonable. Wang Ling followed them with an indifferent expression on his face. He completely hadn't expected to suddenly hear the two mischievous gods, in class, who usually resented Teacher Pan the most, actually discuss her merits. TSK, he must have drunk some fake wine or taken some fake medicine. Just as Wang Ling stepped out of the school gate, he saw Super Chen, who had already reached the crossroads ahead of him. As if he had been startled awake from a nightmare, he broke out in a cold sweat and took a few deep breaths. F***K. I was scared to death. Dopigua? Super Chen, when you walked out of the teaching building just now, didn't you feel old Pan's gaze on your back? Dopigua, no, Super Chen said in a very low voice. A golden core cultivator's ears are very sharp. But it's usually safe once you walk out of the school. Dopigua, then what you said just now, Super Chen rubbed his chin. What I said from the bottom of my heart, half of it was true. Wang Ling sized them up from a distance. Then, he saw a beautiful woman with long, flowing hair and fair skin in high heels standing next to Super Chen and Dopigua. The corners of Wang Ling's mouth twitched. Wasn't this Teacher Pan's second form? Because of school rules, teachers weren't allowed to wear heavy makeup or take any youthful drugs. Teacher Pan usually looked like a middle-aged auntie at school. However, Wang Ling had seen Teacher Pan's youthful form before. Back when Teacher Pan had paid him a home visit, she had done so in this youthful form. The old man had even made Teacher Pan a sweet and sour spare ribs set meal, which was still fresh in Wang Ling's memory. But Wang Ling was the only one who had seen this form halfway through the first semester of grade 1. Standing next to Super Chen and Dopigua on the side of the road, Teacher Pan pretended not to know them as she secretly listened to their conversation. Dopigua, that's why you were so full of praise for old Pan at school, as if you had taken the wrong medicine. Super Chen sked and put his arm around Dopigua's back. You come to school early in the morning with me every day to copy homework for so long. Why haven't you raised your vigilance at all? But it's also possible that my seat is closer to the door, so I'm usually more vigilant. Dopigua couldn't help laughing. TSK, are you crazy? Super Chen, to be honest, I feel like old Pan is right next to us. Next to them, the corners of Teacher Pan's mouth twitched. When Wang Ling got home, he found that Sheep was particularly excited today. She had changed into a new set of clothes. This was a gothic purple-black dress with a small lace umbrella. Today, Wang Ling had asked Sheep to deliver the tattered Daoist robe to Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, who had then accompanied her to Fatty Luo's place to have it repainted. Sheep's clothes in her human form had a lot to do with the paint on her body. The higher the quality of the paint, the purer the color, and the more gorgeous the clothes in her human form. As for the small lace umbrella, it was a gift from Fatty Luo. However, Wang Ling felt that the material of this small umbrella seemed a little familiar. Back in his room, Wang Ling texted Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal to say that Sheep was home, and asked about the progress of the space assessment. About 5 or 6 minutes later, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal replied, "Ha ha ha. It's good that you're home. The space assessment is still in process, and it will take some time for the instrument to start up. Also, we still have to adjust the data. Brother Ling, don't worry. I'll keep an eye on it. By the way, Sheep should be very happy today, right? Fatty Luo specially made that white lace umbrella." Wang Ling couldn't help asking, "What material is it made of?" "Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, Little Silver's fur fell off at my house." Wang Ling, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, I heard that Brother Loopy Toad teased Little Silver last time, and it seems that the blow of breaking up had a big impact on him. Chapter 432. It turned out to be a white lace umbrella made from Little Silver's holy beast fur. Wang Ling broke into a sweat. This could be considered maximizing Little Silver's value. After all, every part of a holy beast's body was a treasure. But it was clear that Fatty Luo hadn't put much effort into making this white lace umbrella. From the very beginning, he had treated it as a decorative magic treasure. But even so, because of Little Silver's holy beast fur, this lace umbrella, which hadn't taken much effort to make, was still an 8th-class holy weapon. If he had plucked out Little Silver's fur just to make this umbrella, that would have been a little too much. Wang Ling put his school bag on the table and took out a thick stack of revision materials. The two gremlins' pen and eraser had already appeared on either side of Wang Ling like door gods the moment he approached the desk. Seeing this scene, Sheep very consciously left the room with the lace umbrella. No one could disturb Ling Zhenren when he was studying. This had already become the #1 rule for all the gremlins in the Wang family who had been enlightened by Wang Ling. Wang Ling pulled out his chair and found that Loopy Toad was lying under the desk, fast asleep as it played with its phone. Wang Ling glanced at the screen and realized that Loopy Toad was actually also watching Daoist Guang's live stream. But at this point in time, the live stream room was already black, which meant that Daoist Guang had already gone offline. Wang Ling looked at the number of followers in Daoist Guang's live stream room. In just one day, Daoist Guang, who used the live streamer ID, Lord Island, had already gained nearly 800,000 followers, and this number was still rising. Even though the live stream room was now black, these 800,000 light chasers were still discussing Lord Island's live stream content tirelessly in the room. Wang Ling had only heard of the game PUBG, but had never played it before. However, he had personally participated in a live version of PUBG during the military training for the 6 schools. Logically speaking, this was Daoist Guang's first time playing this type of online game, so he definitely wouldn't be very good at it. But looking at the bullet messages in the live stream room, the audience seemed very satisfied with Daoist Guang's performance. The corner of Wang Ling's mouth twitched. Based on the number of new fans, he felt that Daoist Guang's suggestion of erecting 9,981 statues around the world and finding 99,981 disciples for the Samsara Spirit Tribulation task didn't seem too difficult. After all, on the first day alone, 800,000 people had already turned into light chasers. But making a statue was a little complicated, but if he could really gather a group of loyal and fanatical fans, anything was possible. Wang Ling sat at his desk and curiously opened the chat app. There were no messages in the 3-person chat group, but Daoist Guang had sent him several private messages, the first of which had been sent at 10 o'clock last night. He remembered that he had been thinking about something at that time, and hadn't checked the message at all. Furthermore, it was very rare for him to receive private messages, so unless someone had added him personally or used shock, it might take a long time before he noticed them. Of course, there were two exceptions. One was grenade-throwing senior immortal, and the other was Wang Ming. These two people were on Wang Ling's special watch list. Message received at 10:03 last night. First, Senior Ling. I'm starting a live stream, remember to come and support me when you're free. Second, oh my. Why are there so many people? At the beginning, there were only 2 or 3 people in my live stream room. I cracked a coconut with my spit, and suddenly there were 1,000 more people. Wang Ling, message received at 0:06 today. Third, F***K. Senior Ling, has broken 100,000. I just used the iron crotch skill to crush 2 coconuts. Who would have thought that it would attract so much attention? Message received at 1:15 today. Fourth, Senior Ling, there are more and more people. I suddenly feel that if there were more people, it wouldn't be too difficult to gather believers and erect statues. Wang Ling, message received at 17:02 today. This was the latest message, which Daoist Guang had sent to Wang Ling after he went off the live stream. Daoist Guang, Senior Ling, you might not believe it, but I've already gained 800,000 fans through live streams this year. During the live stream just now, I asked them if they wanted to help me erect a statue. In the end, they all asked if I wanted to make figurines. Senior Ling, do you know what figurines mean? How do you make them? Wang Ling was stupefied when he saw this message. Loopy Toad lay at Wang Ling's feet. This time, it wasn't because of its narcolepsy, but because it had naturally entered a dream. The Toad clan rarely dreamed, so every time it did, Loopy Toad would remember it very clearly, and it felt especially real. A dream of omens. After its first experience, Loopy Toad was already used to it. It could maintain a clear consciousness in its dreams. In the dream this time, its field of vision was fixed somewhere, and it was completely unable to move. But the scene in the dream was very familiar to Loopy Toad. Because this was the Sky-Swallowing Toad clan's Temple of Heroes, where statues of all the leaders who had led the Toad clan had been erected. Wait a minute. So, had it become a statue? Loopy Toad suddenly seemed to understand something. Out of the corner of its eye, it glanced at the statue next to it. Although it couldn't see it clearly, Loopy Toad could already confirm that this was the 9th generation demon king of the previous Sky-Swallowing Toad clan, the 9th generation leader. The 9th generation was also the most special generation, because Loopy Toad had just been born when the 8th generation leader had died, and the clan had been leaderless. As an old minister who had assisted the 8th generation leader, the 9th generation leader had taken office under enormous public pressure. He had become the 9th generation demon king of the Sky-Swallowing Toad clan. After that, the Sky-Swallowing Toad clan had been invaded by other demon clans, and the 9th generation leader had died a very tragic death in a chaotic battle with the demon race. Loopy Toad remembered that it had inherited the 8th generation leader's bloodline from a young age, and had been pushed onto the throne the year the 9th generation leader died, becoming the 10th generation leader. For a very long time after that, the Sky-Swallowing Toad clan hadn't been invaded by other clans after the 9th generation leader had risked his life in battle. As for the story of the 9th generation leader and Loopy Toad's father, it had been told to Loopy Toad by an elder in the clan. This was an old minister of the Sky-Swallowing Toad clan who had once assisted its father, and was called Elder One by the 9th generation leader. Furthermore, he was currently the most senior elder of the Sky-Swallowing Toad clan, and the clan called him Elder One. In the dream, Loopy Toad recalled a lot of things. Suddenly, its eyes widened. If the statue next to it was the 9th generation leader, then the statue that it had turned into was actually itself? In the next moment, the dream changed once again. The Temple of Heroes, which was originally empty, was now filled with tens of thousands of Toad clan officials. Is this a prayer ceremony? Loopy Toad felt like it had seen this scene before, and couldn't help recalling the prayer ceremony it had seen as a child. It had also been in the Hall of Heroes, and the same tens of thousands of important clan ministers had prostrated themselves and kowtowed to several huge stone statues after praying. Loopy Toad saw Elder One standing at the very front, reciting the clan's incantation. Only people of the Sky-Swallowing Toad clan could understand this incantation. It was like a hometown dialect. Every demon clan had their own hometown dialect. Loopy Toad had never forgotten it. It just looked at Elder One, and then suddenly woke up with a start. Under the desk, its head was drenched in cold sweat. If it hadn't heard wrong, Elder One hadn't been reciting the incantation to pray, but to ask for help. Chapter 433. The prophetic dream was as real as ever. This time, it was so real that Loopy Toad felt like its soul had left its body. Loopy Toad was stunned to realize that when it woke up, it was sweating profusely. If it wasn't for the fact that this sweat had no smell, people would have thought it was peeing on the ground. The moment it entered the dream, Loopy Toad really felt like it had turned into a statue. Perhaps it was already a statue. After 6 years, the clan's ministers should have already accepted the fact that it had died. In these 6 years, forget about erecting a statue in the clan's Temple of Valhalla. Even if they wanted to tear down the previous statues and build a new one, there would still be time. Loopy Toad scratched its head and felt a little irritated. It hadn't expected its second prophetic dream to actually be about its clan. It heard every word of Elder Wen's call for help very clearly, like thunder piercing its ears. After its death, the sky-swallowing Toad clan hadn't appointed a new king for a long time, and the enemy clan, the 9 Nether Python clan, was about to declare war on them. Loopy Toad knew that without a clan leader to lead them and with morale lacking for several years in a row, they would definitely lose this battle. Loopy Toad panted heavily. When it raised its head, it saw that little Master Ling was doing homework, so it silently lay back down on the ground. To be honest, Loopy Toad didn't know what to say. In theory, its current appearance already had nothing to do with the sky-swallowing Toad clan, but it clearly remembered every word that Elder One had said in the Hall of Heroes in its dream. 6 years had passed, and no new king had been appointed. As the oldest official in the clan, Elder One had always believed that it was still alive. Loopy Toad found this hard to believe, and it instantly felt a complicated emotion that it didn't know if it was lament or emotion. It had to think of a way to solve this problem. If that really didn't work, she could look for Wang Ling and act cute. It was a rare quiet night. There was nothing going on in the chat group. Daoist Guang was busy researching the live stream and the figurines. Wang Ling was busy revising and reading. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was in Wang Ming's Research Institute testing the sword chi on the Daoist robe, and Little Silver was trying his best to walk out of the shadow of his heartbreak. Father Wang, on the other hand, was doing his best to think of the right words to use in a new round of battle with the keyboard warriors in the study. Originally, Father Wang's daily battle with the keyboard warriors took place on the toilet on his phone. But now that Mother Wang had forced the Wang family to switch to a thermostatic toilet, Father Wang had to stand up after sitting for less than 2 minutes. Otherwise, if he sat for too long, he would have to sprinkle some cumin on him and he would be grilled meat on a grill. So now Father Wang could only sacrifice some time to watch female live streamer, Little Xian, live stream to clean up his book review section and fight the trolls. Father Wang had a lot of fans, but a lot of fans also meant a lot of haters. No matter which book it was, no matter how well written it was, there would always be haters. Father Wang remembered that when he had just started out and wasn't that popular, he had run into 1 or 2 haters, and he had always liked to directly use his author account to fight them. But now that he was popular, Father Wang could pick his opponents when he fought keyboard warriors. Most of the trolls on the official website only sent trash talk that was all-purpose. Father Wang had long since stopped replying to these trolls who were suspected of being water armies, and had directly banned and deleted them permanently. Out of sight, out of mind. When you had authority, you could do whatever you wanted. After so many years of grinding in the online novel circle, Father Wang had gradually discovered some of the characteristics of the trolls. First, this group of trolls were generally pirated users who didn't subscribe. When they weren't happy with what they saw on the pirated website, they would start by flaming out. Then, afraid that the author wouldn't see them, they would specially register an account on the official website to continue flaming out. So every time Father Wang saw this kind of trolls with no books on the bookshelf and 0 fan points, he would always sigh with emotion in his heart. Why were there such senseless people in the world? In the end, it was because the teacher assigned too little homework. Second, trolls generally like to talk about their experiences. The strength of this group of trolls was slightly stronger than the group of trolls above. Every time they trolled, they especially liked to use allusions and examples to prove how many years of books they had read and how much wisdom they had. What they liked the most was to make wild guesses and think themselves clever, comparing the author they flamed with the author they liked, trampling on the former and praising the latter. Little did they know that the authors in the same circle had a very good relationship with each other. They rewarded each other on the fan list and talked cheerfully and wittily. Father Wang's conclusion about this type of trolls was that their brains might have been replaced with placenta at birth, which resulted in their intelligence not being fully developed. All they had was their bodies, not their brains. This was because people with real IQ and experience were very low-key and would never show off. Third, trolls generally wouldn't read a book completely before commenting on it. Father Wang had actually seen a lot of this type of trolls. He felt that if you wanted to comment on a book, at the very least, you had to read the official version first. Then, after reading 70 to 80% of the original version, you could express your opinion. If you had already spent money and bought a bad product, it was your right to give a bad review. Father Wang felt that people who hadn't spent money and who hadn't even read a few chapters would probably be very unhappy in their daily lives. Father Wang had seen a lot of haters and trolls online over the years, but for the most part, he didn't find it strange at all. If he could use his authority to directly ban them, he would do so without any superfluous words. If he couldn't use his authority, mobilizing fans to report things was also a pretty good choice. Every time Father Wang saw someone retweet a troll's comment in the official reader group, he would tell his fans not to get worked up or swear, and that everyone should just send a smile emoji, because people would always be people and monkeys would always be monkeys. Arguing with monkeys would actually make you look very stupid. Of course, there was one exception, and that was when Father Wang encountered comments that not only attacked him, but also his readers. Whether one read the official version or the pirated version, this actually had something to do with national conditions. But whether it was the official version or the pirated version, Father Wang didn't want his readers to be wantonly attacked and trampled on by this group of trolls. This was Father Wang's bottom line. In front of the screen, Father Wang lit a cigar and puffed out a cloud of smoke. He had just seen a very interesting long comment in the book friend group, which had been forwarded by a loyal official reader from some pirated software. The ID of the troll who had posted the long comment was 3 vats of Meng Po's soup. This troll perfectly combined all the characteristics of the aforementioned trolls. Not only did he flout the work and the author, he even bombarded the work's fans. He felt that the fans who read Father Wang's work were teenagers aged 14 to 16 who didn't have the 3 views of the world and didn't have the ability to distinguish between good and bad. The funniest thing was that this troll actually suspected Father Wang of manipulating the reading figures of the pirated software at the bottom of the post. Standing next to Father Wang, Lai Meng couldn't help exclaiming after reading the long comment, "I'm afraid this isn't a fool's errand. What kind of author manipulates the reading figures of pirated software?" Father Wang laughed. This guy already didn't switch his brain with a placenta when he was born. It's possible that his mother threw him away at birth and left the placenta behind to grow up. Lai Meng, want to fight back? Fight back? Of course. Flaming him was one thing, but flaming his fans was unforgivable. Father Wang raised his eyebrows and his fingers flew. He came up with a couplet and posted it. First line, keyboard big shot has strong trolling power. Second line, pirated hero gives pointers to the country. Horizontal line, M. D. Z. Z. Lai Meng. Chapter 434. Father Wang's action actually wasn't a surprise, since Lai Meng was already used to it. But this time, Lai Meng hadn't expected Father Wang to personally use his author account to respond publicly. In Lai Meng's view, this troll's card was pretty big. This time, he might really be immortalized. Lai Meng felt that being a fan of Father Wang was actually a pretty happy thing. But a response was a response. In the end, this troll had written a 1,000-word-long review on a pirated website to attack Father Wong's work and his fans who liked it. How could you make this troll stop? Usually, the only way was to mobilize the power of the original readers to report him together. Father Wong hadn't even made any appeals, but the fans in the group were already riled up and spontaneously organized wave after wave of attacks to report Father Wong to customer service one after another. On the side, Lai Mengmeng sked repeatedly at this operation. This was a manifestation of fan cohesion. As a top guru on the website, Father Wong's fan group was naturally extremely cohesive. Father Wong looked at his watch. About 5 minutes later, he refreshed the web page again, and all the trolls' comments, including the long review, had disappeared. Lai Mengmeng wiped at his sweat. It's all gone. That was too fast. Lai Mengmeng suddenly felt a little sorry for this troll. This guy didn't have enough IQ to begin with. He had rummaged through elementary school language books and painstakingly written a 1,000-word negative review, thinking that no one would pay attention to him if he posted it on a pirated software and could do whatever he wanted. In the end, he had been reported and deleted as soon as he sent it. Father Wong smiled calmly and took a drag on his cigarette. How far has he gotten? Believe it or not, he'll keep posting. He's courting death. Can he write so many words? Father Wong thought carefully and laughed. I'm guessing he's going to use the knowledge he learned in Peppa Pig as a child. Lai Mengmeng. After another half an hour, Father Wong refreshed the web page again. Very good. Sure enough, this troll struggled to come up with another 200 words. The reply was as follows. First of all, I indeed don't have the financial ability to buy all the books. Rent in first-tier cities is too expensive, so I can only choose good books to buy. It's not realistic to buy all of them, but I'll also buy physical books if they're published, and I won't go around advertising pirated versions. You said the author singled me out? May I ask, how did the author know? Is the author also using pirated software? Or could it be that the true fans of the pirated software went to complain to the author? If it's the former, what right do you have to criticize me? If it's the latter, I can only say that the author is Lu Dongbin. After reading it, Lai Mengmeng scratched his head. What does he mean by that? Why does it feel like your logic is contradictory? Let me analyze it for you. Father Wong smiled and pointed at the screen as he analyzed it sentence by sentence. Look at his first sentence, he said. I indeed don't have the financial ability to buy all the books. Rent in first-tier cities is too expensive, so I can only choose the good ones to buy. The subtext was, you're blaming me for watching pirated versions because the rent is too expensive? That's why I scrimped and lived frugally to choose books to read, and all I read are the 4 great classical novels. Lai Mengmeng, Father Wong, let's look at the second sentence. He says, how did the author know? Is the author also using pirated software? The subtext of this sentence was, I was caught off guard. I thought no one would see my ramblings. Since the fans of this book are all fake reviewers, then the author must have read a pirated version. Lai Mengmeng, the third sentence is actually the funniest one. If it's the latter, then I can only say that the author is really Lu Dongbin. Subtext, I am a dog. Lai Mengmeng snickered. After parsing these words, Father Wong stared at the screen and couldn't help sking. This batch of trolls really have no standards. After saying that, Father Wong straightaway picked up the phone on the table and started to flip through the address book. Lai Mengmeng, who is Brother Wong looking for? Father Wong replied lightly, Doctor. Lai Mengmeng, what for? Father Wong couldn't help laughing. You were bitten by a dog, you need to get vaccinated. Lai Mengmeng, elsewhere, at the Cultivation Academy of Sciences Research Institute, the spatial assessment was ready. Wang Ming and grenade-throwing senior immortal were now in front of a giant eggshell-shaped glass dome, and they could clearly see a tiny space crack inside. This crack was not created by magic, but by the decomposition of space by modern technology. Brother Wang Ming, will this work? Grenade-throwing senior immortal asked curiously. Hands in his pockets, Wang Ming nodded confidently. Of course it won't be a problem. We've already tested this machine several times before, and its performance is up to standard. However, it does take a long time to warm up and start up. There's still room for improvement. Wang Ming then took out the tattered Daoist robe that grenade-throwing senior immortal had brought, but just as he was about to approach the glass dome, Zhai Yin stopped him. Let me do it. Zhai Yin took a breath, her tone as cold as usual. I've already tested it many times, there won't be a problem. Wang Ming really wanted to refuse, but his attitude wasn't as resolute as before, and he did his best to speak in a calm tone. Last time, he had used the heavenly materials sword to brace himself to save that group of students in the hospital. Coupled with the excessive consumption from using the brain deduction technique, he had been in a coma for several days. Although he really didn't want to admit it, it was indeed Zhai Yin who had stayed by his side to take care of him during those few days. Wang Ming wasn't stupid, he naturally knew that Zhai Yin had designs on him. But he just couldn't figure out how he had provoked this female bodhisattva. No. Zhai Yin said resolutely. Even if it's just a tiny space crack, if anything happens, you'll be cut to pieces right away. Wang Ming, you're exaggerating. Zhai Yin folded her arms and looked at Wang Ming. Either you listen to me, or you stop the experiment. Wang Ming couldn't be bothered to argue any further, and directly chose to give up. Fine, fine, fine. I'll listen to you, big sister. After saying that, he handed the tattered Daoist robe to Zhai Yin. Zhai Yin took it with great satisfaction, and then went to operate the machine with ease. On the side, the young man in white was shocked when he heard this. Big sister? Wang Ming nodded and pointed at Zhai Yin's back. That's right, this person who looks like a man is actually a big sister. Are you shocked? This big sister is a rare gem in our country's gender identification field. Hearing this, the corners of Zhai Yin's mouth twitched. Grenade-throwing senior immortal whispered in Wang Ming's ear, then, Brother Wang Ming, what's your relationship? Relationship? Wang Ming couldn't help laughing. Of course we're brothers. Hearing Wang Ming's words, Zhai Yin couldn't help trembling. Chapter 435. It wasn't that grenade-throwing senior immortal had heard of Wang Ming, but this was his first time meeting him. He had heard Wang Ling mention Wang Ming several times when they were chatting. And each time, there was an indescribable resentment in it. It was an indescribable feeling of love and hate. To be honest, grenade-throwing senior immortal felt that Zhai Yin was exaggerating a little. This was Brother Ling's cousin. Even if his cultivation wasn't as good as Brother Ling's, how bad could it be? Grenade-throwing senior immortal also hadn't sensed any aura from Wang Ming, but he felt that anyone who was related to Brother Ling definitely wasn't simple. Thinking about all the great seniors in the Wang family's small villa, even a single broccoli contained the most profound knowledge of heavenly Tao. To put it bluntly, they were all people who had cultivated for thousands of years. They had to have some sort of mental understanding of whether they had strength or not. Thus, grenade-throwing senior immortal was a little displeased with Zhai Yin's attitude. But he couldn't say anything, because he felt that these two people's current state was very much like the kind of couple who were flirting. Standing behind Wang Ming in the research institute, grenade-throwing senior immortal deeply felt that there was an indescribable azura field between the two of them. It was very terrifying. Grenade-throwing senior immortal didn't even dare speak. He was actually a little afraid that a fourth person would suddenly jump out at this moment and yell something like, I was clearly here first. But Wang Ming and Zhai Yin were already used to this kind of situation. Considering grenade-throwing senior immortal's presence, in the end, Wang Ming chose to alleviate this seemingly awkward atmosphere for the first time. He explained the procedure for the space assessment. There's no need to doubt the performance of this instrument. I've tested it many times. Do you see that fine, gossamer lead on the outside of the glass cover? I've defined this lead as a dimensional line. As long as we connect this dimensional line to the object being appraised, we'll be able to roughly determine the relevant data of this Daoist robe, including the remnant sword chi on it. We'll be able to precisely find the relevant dimensional coordinates. Grenade-throwing senior immortal looked at this scene with a slightly amazed expression. It wasn't that he hadn't heard of space tracking technology, but he had thought that it would probably be 100 years before it could be realized. But Wang Ming's strength was beyond his imagination. In theory, Wang Ming had already developed a prototype for a scientific instrument that could only be invented several hundred years later. Although there were indeed some shortcomings in the time it took for the machine to start up, this small flaw still couldn't overshadow Wang Ming's groundbreaking research in this field. On the other side, Wang Ling had finished reviewing all his homework for the current stage. Including the time he had spent scrolling through the news on his wristwatch, it took him less than 10 minutes to memorize all the important revision points for the midterm exam that Teacher Pan had talked about in class today. No matter what, learning was always the most important thing. There were even times when, in his eyes, even the monthly test was much more important than the 3,000 great spells. The reason was simple: this was because humans treasured the things that they had fought hard for. For Wang Ling, the 3,000 great Tao had been formed as his brain cells grew from a young age. The time he truly spent on cultivation was perhaps even less than the monthly exams. Putting down the revision materials in his hand, Wang Ling took a look at the messages. Whether it was the private chat window or the chat group, they were all empty. After all, it had been many years since Daoist Guang's tattered Daoist robe had been used. Wang Ling felt that it wouldn't be an easy task to rely on the wisps of sword qi left on the Daoist robe to track the corresponding space coordinates using a scientific instrument. But Wang Ling was very confident in this matter, because he knew that Wang Ming had already developed a relevant instrument to measure space. Perhaps this instrument wasn't in its perfect state, and was just a prototype. But Wang Ling believed that in today's world, if even Wang Ming couldn't do it, no one else would be able to. After finishing his homework, Old Man Wang called Wang Ling downstairs. Old Man Wang and Jiang Haifu, the head of Kitchen Knife Sect, who was also Wang Ling's grade classmate Jiang Bai's father, had previously arranged to have a cooking competition. Seeing that the appointed date was approaching, the old man had been working very hard these days to come up with a lot of new dishes, intending to show them off in front of Jiang Bai's father. Thus, Wang Ling had been summoned to try out the latest dishes. And this time, the old man had invented 2 brand new dishes. The old man was actually a very competitive person, especially when he was young. As long as it was a cooking competition, he would strive to be the champion. Now that he had lived for more than half his life, he had never failed in any cooking competition he had participated in so far. At the old man's insistent request, Wang Ling, Father Wang, Mother Wang, and Loopy Toad were all called together. This Jiang Haifu is the head of Kitchen Knife Sect and one of the biggest leaders in the food and beverage industry today. Kikaro Restaurant is his family's business. Can you do it, Dad? Father Wang sat obediently at the dining table as he weakly voiced his doubts. He had been happily battling the troll just now and had sent his greetings to the troll's entire family. He had been planning to send his greetings to all 18 generations of his ancestors, but hadn't expected the old man to drag him downstairs. The old man held the iron ladle in his hand and knocked on the table forcefully. What's wrong? Are you looking down on me, an old employee of Kikaro Restaurant? In any case, I've been the head chef of Kikaro Restaurant's flagship store for more than 30 years, and I invented many of their dishes. Father Wang was speechless. Then, at the dining table, everyone saw the old man lift the lid off the first dish. This was a pot of very thick broth. The broth looked very clear and overflowed with spirit power, which made people feel relaxed and happy just by smelling it. Father Wang couldn't wait to scoop up a spoonful of broth and drink it. In an instant, he actually felt his exhaustion sweep away. What kind of broth is this, Dad? Father Wang looked at the old man and felt that it was very magical. The old man pinched his beard and said with a smile, when dealing with extraordinary people, you naturally have to use extraordinary methods. You think this is just a pot of meat, but the meat inside is actually the internal organs of a spirit monkey. I was looking for this ingredient before, and I never thought that I would really find it through my friend. Listening, Mother Wang also took a sip of the broth and was full of praise. It's really delicious. Amazing, amazing. Father Wang couldn't help giving him a thumbs up. Then, Dad, how did you get the inspiration for these dishes? The old man looked at Father Wang. Cooking is actually the same as writing, it comes from life. 2 days ago, wasn't there a live streamer called Baboon who was banned? That was actually where I got the inspiration for this dish. I named it Baboon Head Soup. Wang Ling, Father Wang, then the inspiration for the second dish, Old Man Wang. The first dish was inspired by the legal system show PlayerUnknown's Battleground, Rise of the Baboon. The second dish was inspired by the second episode of this legal system show PlayerUnknown's Battleground, Hit the Snake 7 Inches Deep. Father Wang and Mother Wang, Old Man Wang, so I named the second dish Snakeskin Soup. Chapter 436. Space assessment took some time, and after connecting the Daoist robe to the dimensional line, Jai-in separated it from the Daoist robe after about 10 minutes, and returned the tattered robe to Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. Because he had always thought that Jai-in was a man, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal wasn't used to changing the way he addressed her. Brother Jai-in, Jai-in stared at him, and the young man in white couldn't help wiping his sweat with the tattered Daoist robe. Well, Miss Jai-in, what's the assessment result? Jai-in replied indifferently, the dimensional line has already extracted the residual sword chi data from the Daoist robe, but it still needs time. The assessment report will come out in 24 hours. She stared at Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. You can leave today. I'll let you know if there's anything. On the side, Wang Ming frowned and couldn't help muttering, 24 hours? That long? That can't be. Jai Yin's gaze froze. I said 24 hours, so it's 24 hours. If you say any more nonsense, I'll smash this machine. The corner of Wang Ming's mouth twitched. Did you take the wrong medicine? Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, for some reason, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal sensed a very strange azure field from these two people, but the young man in white could actually sense it, and could more or less guess why this Miss Jai-in was so furious. At this time, there was no one else in the research institute except for Wang Ming and Jai-in. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal seemed to have heard Wang Ming mention it before. This week, all the experts in the research institute except for him had been sent out to investigate, and it would take them 2 or 3 days to return. So, there was only one truth. He had become a third wheel. As Great Death-courting senior in the cultivation circle, the reason why he was so sought after by so many people wasn't just because of his chivalrous sense of justice, but also because of his EQ. Even in modern cultivation society, people without EQ couldn't survive. In this circle, it was very important to learn how to read a person's words from their body language. Looking at the look in their eyes, one could tell that there was definitely something going on between these two people. RBQ, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, who was certain that he had disturbed their good time, could only laugh bitterly. Then, Brother Wang Ming, I'll take my leave first today and wait for your news. Wang Ming, is that okay? Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal shook his head. It's fine, it's fine. Brother Wang Ming and Miss Jai-in are more important. Wang Ming, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal patted Wang Ming on the shoulder with an expression that said he had already seen through everything. I won't bother you any longer, but when Brother Wang Ming is doing something, it's best if you pay more attention, Wang Ming? Speaking up to this point, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal pulled Wang Ming to one side and said in a very low voice, I have a friend who didn't control his strength when he was doing something, and directly caused a magnitude 10 earthquake. Given Brother Wang Ming's realm, you'd better be careful when you're playing at the Research Institute. Wang Ming, Jai-in, standing at the entrance to the Research Institute, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal couldn't help heaving a long sigh of relief. Back then, at the Wang family's small villa, old Senior Wang had put a broccoli in Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's bowl. Back then, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had already analyzed old Senior Wang's expression and noticed that there was something unusual about that broccoli. And this time, he analyzed the unspeakable secret between the two of them with just one look. Oh my God! As expected, he was a little genius. At the same time, in another unknown space, this was a dark gray world. Even the clouds were dark gray, and it reeked of darkness. A young man with long black hair sat upright on a huge black boulder on the top of a craggy mountain. The corners of his eyes were heavily painted with eyeshadow, and the evil blue patterns on his face were extremely sinister, extending from his cheeks to the back of his neck. His style was full of evil. Immortal Jinyuan, you can't fool me. The entrance to the treasure house is here. I also know that you're here. What? Are you not willing to come out and meet this junior? The evil young man closed his eyes and sneered. His voice wasn't loud, but it was extremely penetrating, and the whole world was filled with the echo of the young man's voice. This was a powerful sound wave spell. Spirit power surged out, and anyone below the soul formation stage wouldn't be able to withstand it at all, and would directly explode and die. The young man knew that there were no living creatures in this space, but he still did it on purpose. This was a provocation. And most importantly, the young man felt that when he spoke, there would be an echo, which would give him a very cool feeling. He, evil sword god, was a grand almighty, and he had to speak with vigor. However, after a long time, there was no response. He was very sure that Immortal Jinyuan was here. Even if he wasn't in this world, he was definitely monitoring this place. After about a minute, the young man felt spiritual pressure descend from the sky, which was accompanied by the power of a restriction. The young man sensed that his sound wave spell had been restricted. Immortal Jinyuan, do you think you can restrict my echo like this? Can you restrict my echo now? Are you restricting my echo? Are you controlling my echo? Did you hear my reply? Did you hear back? My echo, is it, Immortal Jinyuan, about 5 minutes later. In the next moment, evil sword god opened his eyes and looked at the sky. He couldn't help sneering in his heart. In this world, there's actually a junior who dares to use sword chi to track me? What a joke. Ever since he had mastered the power of sword Dao, he could clearly sense the network of sword chi, and the enormous grid of sword chi was as clear as a spider's web in his mind. Sword, come! Evil sword god roared in his heart. With a wave of his hand, there was a hum as countless particles of light converged in the air to form a purple-black spirit sword in his hand, the number 1 sword on the spirit sword power ranking list, Heaven Cleaving. Holding Heaven Cleaving in his hand, evil sword god lightly slashed the air. Spirit power howled in the chaotic space, and a crack suddenly appeared. This was a space fissure which evil sword god had forcibly opened up with the power of sword Dao. He used it as a portal. As long as he had been to a place, he could use sword chi to split open a gap and come and go as he pleased. Evil sword god raised his head and laughed into the air. Immortal Jinyuan, after I've dealt with this rude junior, I'll come back for you. This junior will 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 come back for you. You. After saying that, evil sword god raised his sword and stepped into the air fissure. Chapter 437. After leaving the research institute, grenade-throwing senior immortal tossed the spirit sword on his back aside and chose to fly it home. The sword on grenade-throwing senior immortal's back was called Brilliant Victory, which clearly meant ever victorious and brilliant. This sword hadn't been made by Fatty Luo, but had been passed down from grenade-throwing senior immortal's ancestors. It was usually in a sealed state with layers of seals wrapped around it like a rice dumpling, but it actually didn't affect its ability to fly a sword. At most, it looked a little worse for wear. Another pain in the ass point was that this spirit sword had been forged by a weaponsmithing master from out of town, so when grenade-throwing senior immortal had obtained it back then, the sword plate number of this spirit sword was from out of town. During the morning and evening rush hours, there was a flight restriction. But the timing was just right. If he took a spirit bus back, it would take up a lot of time. Grenade-throwing senior immortal had just jumped onto the spirit sword and was about to set off when he received a phone call. He looked at the caller ID, Cheat Master Reed. He hadn't typed it wrong, eh? Was it Cheat Master Reed? Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal stared blankly at the screen. After touring Immortal Toya's Chrysanthemum Island, he had privately looked for this fortune-teller friend of his, Daoist Reed. People had given him the nickname Cheat Reed Master because his divination was as accurate as a cheat. Like Fatty Luo, this person wasn't in the chat group, but he was very good friends with Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. No matter what era it was, there were always mavericks. There were too many eccentrics in the cultivation circle to count. Some people didn't join the group, so there was no point in pulling them in. In the end, it was up to the individual, who knew if one day they would feel lonely like Daoist Guang and want to join the group to chat every day. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal pressed the answer button. On the other end of the line came Cheat Master Reed's voice with a slight local accent. Hey. Fungus? Likely? Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, Brother Reed, like me. As soon as he said this, the young man in white couldn't help stamping his foot. Every time he spoke to Cheat Master Reed, his accent would slip. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal composed himself and asked, Brother Lu, is there any news about the divination I asked you to do? After leaving Chrysanthemum Island, he had looked for Cheat Master Reed with the intention of telling Immortal Toya's marriage fortune. However, marriage divination was what Daoist Reed hated the most. Not only did it take a long time to complete, but every person who asked for a marriage divination would also develop a kind of overconfidence after learning about the direction of their own marriage fate, so why were there so many straight men and straight women nowadays? Daoist Reed felt that he was partly to blame. Thus, if one were to ask Daoist Reed for a marriage divination, unless they were very good friends, they wouldn't accept this type of divination no matter how much money they were offered. Daoist Reed said, marriage divination. I'll have to wait for a while. It's not easy to do, but once it's done, it'll definitely be accurate. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, then why did Brother Lu look for me today? Daoist Reed, Fungus, do you still remember the first few times you asked me to kill you? You gave me the 8 characters of your birth. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal nodded. That seems to be the case, but even so, it had been a long time, at least several hundred years. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal remembered that he had left the 8 characters of his birth for the sake of fortune-telling. Daoist Reed, on the other hand, had the habit of storing the information of his frequent customers for future use. Daoist Reed, last time, before I was helping Fungus's friend with his divination, I took the wrong 8 characters of his birth, and accidentally took them to be Fungus's. When I was done, I realized that something was wrong. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal frowned slightly. Took the wrong one? This was a fairly low-level mistake, and it was basically impossible for an experienced fortune-teller like Daoist Reed to make a mistake. Generally speaking, this kind of unintentional misreading of the 8 characters was usually a sign of something. Daoist Reed's thoughts were almost the same as Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's. I felt that this mistake might be some kind of sign, so I helped Fungus with his divination first. And the result? According to the divination, Fungus might be in for a bloody calamity, great misfortune? Wrong. It seems extremely ominous. It seems to be an ominous divination of life and death. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal broke out in a sweat. You didn't make a mistake, did you? On the other end of the phone, Daoist Reed shook his head. It can't be wrong, I did it 3 times. Originally, I had my suspicions that there might be a problem somewhere. Previously, I had helped Fungus Garlic calculate its fortune. Fungus Garlic would be blessed with the light of fortune for the next 1,000 years. Logically speaking, it shouldn't be too likely for such an inauspicious divination to appear. Furthermore, when I did the divination for the 2nd and 3rd times, I even used the Imperial Garlic Divining Magic artifact. Daoist Reed was very confident in the accuracy of his divination. This Garlic Divining Magic artifact is amazing. So far, I've never failed with this magic artifact. What kind of magic artifact is it? It's a magic sword called the Fortune Avoidance Sword. This sword can predict misfortune, but not fortune. If the divination is steady and auspicious, the magic sword won't move at all. The more ominous the divination, the more the sword will tremble. When I tested it on Fungus today, it was like a vibrator with the highest gear on. Grenade throwing Senior Immortal, then, Brother Reed, do you have a way to break it? Daoist Reed sighed and looked a little embarrassed. If it's very ominous, I have a way, as for extremely ominous. Fungus, brother, there's something I don't know if I should say. Grenade throwing Senior Immortal, Brother Reed, please speak your mind. Daoist Reed, Fungus, please pay me for the garlic divination right away. You can go in peace, Empress Lawn. I'm afraid if you delay any longer, I won't be able to receive it. Grenade throwing Senior Immortal. After the call ended, Grenade throwing Senior Immortal stared at the screen and sank into deep thought for a long time. To be honest, it wasn't that he didn't know what extremely ominous meant, this was a divination of imminent disaster. Generally speaking, this kind of divination was no different from receiving a notice of critical illness in the hospital, but no matter how he thought about it, Grenade throwing Senior Immortal couldn't understand why he was suddenly facing imminent disaster. No, if that was the case, he couldn't go back yet. Once an extremely ominous divination was divined, it would come true within 24 hours. Furthermore, the ominous scent would spread to the surroundings. If he went home at this time, even Little Silver might be implicated. What should he do? Should he go look for Brother Ling? Just as he was about to make a call, there was a whoosh. At that moment, a streak of sword chi actually attacked him from afar. This sword chi was a warning, and it brushed past Grenade throwing Senior Immortal's ear at an extremely fast speed as it swept away a few strands of his black hair. Who was it? Grenade throwing Senior Immortal looked in the direction the sword chi had come from. In the moonlight, he saw a very evil-looking young man standing on a high street lamp and staring at him with a dark expression on his face. The young man sneered and said indifferently, "I am evil sword god, god. Chapter 438. Under the street lamp, that very evil young man introduced himself in a very Chuyuni tone. When Grenade throwing Senior Immortal heard this, he couldn't help blurting out, "Psycho." There was something very wrong with this guy. Maybe he was a mental patient who had escaped from some mental hospital. The true monarch's mind was filled with endless wild and fanciful thoughts. He didn't dare to let his guard down, because even though the young man maintained a distance of 30 meters from him, the evil aura made him instinctively feel a sense of oppression. The young man in white subconsciously gripped the brilliant victory sword, and realized that his hand was actually trembling. Grenade throwing Senior Immortal couldn't help breaking out in a cold sweat on his cheeks. This was the first time he had ever trembled from the depths of his soul. Letting a patient with a mental illness like this run around on the streets was bound to cause a riot. Grenade throwing Senior Immortal felt that perhaps he should take this person back to the hospital. But very quickly, he changed his mind and suddenly recalled the Daoist name this evil young man had used to introduce himself. Evil sword god, holy shit. This guy is evil sword god. Because of the evil young man's convulsive self-introduction, it took Grenade throwing Senior Immortal a long time to react before he realized what was going on. But why had evil sword god suddenly appeared here? Gritting his teeth, Grenade throwing Senior Immortal raised his head again to look at the street lamp where evil sword god had been standing, but he had already disappeared. In the next moment, a hand was already on his shoulder, and a voice filled with fear from the depths of his soul rang out. "Looking for me?" This speed, was this a teleportation spell? Grenade throwing Senior Immortal turned his head in bewilderment, and only saw half of this evil young man's sinister smile. "Bull Jr., you dare trace my sword chi in reverse to try and find me? I'll take off half your shoulder first." In the next moment, Grenade throwing Senior Immortal felt immense pressure on his right shoulder as a ball of demonic energy condensed in evil sword god's hand. At the same time, that voice rang out in Grenade throwing Senior Immortal's mind. "This ball of spirit power contains the sword Dao Chi of my heaven-cleaving sword, and can cause permanent damage to anyone below itinerant immortal level. Even godly medicine won't help." As soon as he finished speaking, there was a loud bang, and the ball of spiritual energy mixed with the evil sword energy exploded. Grenade-throwing senior immortal was directly sent flying several thousand meters before he landed on the ground and stopped the violent impact. There was no blood as expected. The ball of spiritual energy only blasted a hole in the robe of the white-clothed youth. Evil Sword God stared at this scene from a distance. The situation was a little unexpected. That was close. Grenade-throwing senior immortal broke out in a cold sweat. His white Taoist robe had already been blown to shreds. This was Anima's latest high-class product. Because it was too expensive, he only bought 2 in total and planned to change them on a daily basis. In the end, one of them was scrapped. There was a basketball-sized hole in his white Taoist robe on his shoulder, revealing the long johns that Mother Wang had given him earlier. It was obvious that Wang Ling had also enchanted these long johns. If it hadn't been for the power of the long johns, Grenade-throwing senior immortal was well aware that he wouldn't have been able to withstand such explosive damage at all. At that moment, the young man in white already had a theory as to why Evil Sword God had been looking for him. Since they could use the Taoist robe that Taoist Guang had left behind to track Evil Sword God using the sword she left on it, Evil Sword God could naturally also use the sword she left on it to find this place. Previously, the Taoist robe had been sealed, and Evil Sword God had thought that Taoist Guang was already dead, so he hadn't followed them. Grenade-throwing senior immortal hadn't expected that Evil Sword God would actually be alerted by the reverse-tracking sword chi this time. In the end, he had been careless. Evil Sword God had already mastered the power of Sword Dao, one of the 3,000 great spells, and had become extremely sensitive to Sword Dao. He could even clearly sense something as intangible as sword chi. Grenade-throwing senior immortal thought about it carefully. It seemed that he had used that tattered Taoist robe to wipe his sweat at the research institute just now. It was likely that the sword chi left on it had stained his body at that time. One misstep, and a lifetime of regret. Grenade-throwing senior immortal was filled with remorse. He knew that he was already powerless to resist the current situation, and could only think of a way to find Wang Ling first. Thinking this, he immediately stepped on the brilliant victory sword in his hand, and then swiftly soared into the sky in the direction of the Wang family's villa. Evil Sword God was too powerful. When he stepped on the spirit sword just now, Grenade-throwing senior immortal realized that all the electronic equipment on him had already been destroyed by the other party's overflowing sword chi. Not only that, when Evil Sword God had pressed down on his shoulder just now, the moment the psionic power was released, all the streetlights on the road were instantly extinguished, and everything became pitch black. All the electronic devices in the area, including the cars that were moving, stopped working in an instant. They were all destroyed by the evil sword chi. In the darkness, Evil Sword God opened his eyes, which emitted a faint purple light and gave off a very demonic feeling. A little interesting. Evil Sword God sneered. He hadn't expected his move just now to actually not cause any damage to the young man, which proved that the defensive equipment under the young man's Taoist robe wasn't of a low grade. Looking in the direction in which Grenade-throwing senior immortal had fled, Evil Sword God's eyes focused on the spirit sword which Grenade-throwing senior immortal was standing on. Although the sword was wrapped in layers of seals, it gave him a very familiar feeling. Back then, his Shizhuan Fan Rui, whose Taoist name was Heavenly Sword Immortal, had been famous for thousands of years on Sword Dao because of his two-handed swordsmanship. And both swords which were hailed as the 2 great godly swords were in the hands of Heavenly Sword Immortal Fan Rui. One was called Heaven Cleaving, which was number 1 on the list of swords in power, and the one which Evil Sword God had now seized. The other was called Brilliant Victory, which was number 1 on the list of swords in defense, and had an extremely powerful parrying ability and defensive attribute. Back then, after he had killed his Shifu and snatched Heaven Cleaving from him, he had been looking for the whereabouts of Brilliant Victory all this time. Even though Brilliant Victory's aura was wrapped in layers of seals, he had still been able to smell its fragrance when he had gotten close. There's no mistaking it, Evil Sword God stuck out his long, pointed tongue and licked his lips. He had initially just wanted to teach a lesson to this junior who had dared to follow his sword chi and track his aura. He hadn't expected to accidentally learn of Brilliant Victory's whereabouts. But, why was Brilliant Victory in this person's hands? Evil Sword God laughed evilly. Forget it, let's catch this person first. Chapter 439. It would take less than a quarter of an hour to fly at top speed to the Wang family's villa in a straight line. But grenade-throwing senior immortal couldn't choose this direct route now. Considering evil sword god's ferocious nature, he didn't want to involve innocent passers-by. Thus, he steered the brilliant victory sword and took a detour to a sparsely populated area. But this way, it would take him 40 minutes to reach the Wang family's villa. Whether he lived or died today would all depend on these 40 minutes. At that moment, grenade-throwing senior immortal just hoped that no traffic police would stop him. He was already speeding while flying the sword at top speed. It was a small matter if the traffic police stopped him and deducted points or fined him or revoked his driving license, but if evil sword god interfered, more innocent people would suffer. From beginning to end, evil sword god didn't move. The evil purple light in his eyes lit up. He named this move looking at the horizon with one eye, and it was also one of the purple investigative demon eyes techniques. Back then, after personally killing his Shifu, his second stop had been the Tang sect, which his Shifu had been on good terms with. He had found Tang Shijiu, the current 19th generation sect leader's disciple, and taken off his pair of purple investigative demon eyes to install them in his own eyes. With this pair of demon eyes in hand and the eye technique, looking at the horizon with one eye, his eyes could track very far away. Want to go somewhere with fewer people? Not a bad idea. Unfortunately, it's no use. Evil sword god sneered in his heart. Standing on the spot with one hand behind his back, he waved his hand and slashed down with his sword in the air. Interesting guy, but in my eyes, you're still just a miscellaneous cultivator. A space fissure opened. After calculating grenade-throwing senior immortal's escape route, evil sword god stepped into it and disappeared. Flying through the air, grenade-throwing senior immortal instantly felt nervous. He thought he had already escaped far enough, but the pressure from evil sword god had never disappeared. He could feel a pair of eyes staring at him from behind. I have to hold on. I have to get to Brother Ling. Grenade-throwing senior immortal gritted his teeth, turned around, and threw out several black grenades in a row as he recited a spell. Enhanced Skybomb Grenade. In an instant, there was the sound of explosions, and in the blink of an eye, the sky was filled with smoke and fog for thousands of miles. Boom boom boom, this enhanced version of sky-piercing thunder was deafening, and the fog it emitted was not ordinary either. There was a fog that could temporarily blind people. When evil sword god tore open a space fissure and walked out, he immediately found himself wrapped in fog. Sky-shattering thunder? Evil sword god snorted coldly. My venerable self has never successfully escaped from anyone I want to kill. Evil sword god pointed his sword at him, and the demonic and overbearing sword chi on the blade vibrated in the air. Mongrel cultivator. My venerable self wants to ask you, what on earth is this armor you're wearing? If you tell me the truth, my venerable self can let you die a little more painlessly. This person's name is Wang Ling, grenade-throwing senior immortal replied. The armor I'm wearing was made by him. The two of them aren't far away. If senior evil sword god is willing to shout for him, he'll definitely hear you. At this point, grenade-throwing senior immortal knew that it was already impossible for him to escape, but he still clung to one last glimmer of hope. How about you shout for him? After staring blankly for a moment, evil sword god couldn't stop laughing wildly. In the end, you're just a mongrel cultivator. You actually sold out your friends so easily. Don't worry, my venerable self will definitely shout for him. He could tell that grenade-throwing senior immortal wasn't lying. His purple investigative demon eyes could detect minute expressions on a person's face, and he would immediately be able to tell if someone was lying. He raised his sword and pointed it at grenade-throwing senior immortal. Don't worry. Once my venerable self exterminates you, your friend will come down to accompany you very soon. As he said this, evil sword god raised his hand, and the heaven-cleaving sword flew out. As it swung out, the space around it cracked inch by inch. Was it over? In the last moment of his life, grenade-throwing senior immortal's mind was exceptionally calm. Under the ferocious sword light, his vision was filled with hallucinations. It seemed like he was seeing Wang Ling. He couldn't block it at all. He couldn't even see the shadow of the heaven-cleaving sword clearly. In the next moment, his entire body was instantly pierced by the heaven-cleaving sword, and the power of sword Dao exploded in his body as he turned into a bloody mist. TCH. In the end, you're just a mongrel cultivator. You can't even withstand a single blow. Evil sword god sneered. He stretched out his hand to grab the brilliant victory sword, then roared wildly as he directly used the 10,000 Li telepathy spell to shout wildly in the air. Wang Ling. Where is mongrel cultivator Wang Ling? Mongrel cultivator Wang Ling. Come out and die. Come out and die, come out and die, come out and die. However, the echo came to an abrupt end. Because in the next moment, evil sword god saw a youngster appear in the air opposite him at some point. Without saying a word, this youngster's figure moved, and he instantly appeared in front of evil sword god, face to face. Evil sword god finally broke out in a cold sweat. He realized that his purple investigative demon eyes couldn't catch him at all. Evil sword god stared at him. You're a mongrel. Before he could finish speaking, Wang Ling had already slapped him. Evil sword god sneered. Humph. Insignificant skill. He stretched out his arm to fend it off. However, in the next moment, there was the sound of arm bones breaking. This slap landed accurately on evil sword god's face. Evil sword god screamed as he felt an incredible pain in his face. Blood flew out of his nose, his teeth flew out, and his eyes widened in terror. He directly turned into a meteor as he was smashed into the ground from 10,000 meters in the air. Chapter 440. Evil sword god was directly smashed into the ground. In that instant, one could only think of the phrase, 3 inches into the ground. Wang Ling stared at the human-shaped dent in the ground, smoke still rising from his palm. Actually, when Wang Ling had been at home earlier, he had already sensed a trace of unease, but it was a pity that he had still been a step too late. This slap was a lesson for evil sword god's arrogance, and he hadn't used his full strength. Because Wang Ling felt that if he could free this devil with just one slap, it would really be too easy on him, Wang Ling floated in the air. In order to prevent others from getting involved in this fight, when he had smacked evil sword god, the intrinsic spirit field had already covered the area to form an independent space that was separated from the real world. Evil sword god crawled out of the pit with a swollen face, which twitched slightly. Apart from anger, he was more shocked. He stared at Wang Ling, itinerant immortal. No, he was definitely stronger than an itinerant immortal. But judging from his realm and aura alone, the youngster in front of him was indeed an itinerant immortal. But it really didn't make sense for a mere itinerant immortal to be able to beat him like this with one slap. Evil sword god raised his eyes and reached out to touch his cheek. A purple spirit light lit up in his hand, and the swelling on his face almost instantly healed. Jumping out of the pit, he looked around and realized that the scene in front of him had already changed. Thanks to his purple investigative demon eyes, he was well aware that this wasn't an illusion, but a real scene. In front of him, that old stone statue, those dozen or so palm trees that were still standing despite being in their twilight years, and the school building behind them that looked like it had been renovated many times, everything was undoubtedly real. And at that moment, the youngster who had smacked him to the ground with one slap was now looking down at him from the old stone statue, instant release of the intrinsic spirit field. Evil sword god's eyes darkened as he thought that this miscellaneous cultivator young man was indeed not simple. He was able to display formidable strength beyond his realm, and this intrinsic spirit field, which originally could only be used at the true immortal level, could be instantly released. All of this was a clear indication of this youngster's extraordinary strength. Was I careless? Thinking this, evil sword god clutched his stomach and started to laugh like he had lost his mind. So many years had passed. It had been too long since he had tasted pain. Wang Ling's slap had woken him up, and also made him feel a kind of evil nature that had fused with his blood continuously churn all over his body. Mongrel cultivator, you did well. You've successfully piqued my interest. The junior that I killed earlier actually dared to use his sword chi to track me. I thought it was a kind of provocation. Evil Sword God held Brilliant Victory in his left hand and Heaven Cleaving in his right. He then raised his right arm and pointed the blade at Wang Ling. Since you're his friend, you should also be punished for his disrespect to me. Not just you. Wait until I cut you into 8 pieces, then I'll grab your soul. I'll kill your family and friends one by one. Hearing this, Wang Ling took a deep breath. Saying this, Evil Sword God looked around contemptuously and snorted. Humph. It's just an intrinsic spirit field, what can it do to me? Evil Sword God was very confident. He was sure that he had been careless earlier, because he hadn't used any defensive means at the time, and had only used his physical body to block the attack. In the end, he had been careless and suffered a great loss. Now that he was serious, Evil Sword God felt his evil nature surge. Wang Ling's slap had stimulated his fighting spirit. Not only that, he had now gathered Heaven Cleaving and Brilliant Victory, which could be said to be a combination of offensive and defensive spirit swords on the spirit sword list, which made his battle strength even more formidable than before. Mongrel Cultivator. From the moment my venerable self seized this Brilliant Victory sword, the game was already over. In the next moment, Evil Sword God attacked again. Mongrel Cultivator, die. He flashed across the ground like a bolt of lightning. Even in Wang Ling's intrinsic spirit field, his movements were still very swift and fierce. Holding 2 swords in his hands, he advanced toward the old stone statue where Wang Ling was standing as he split into many clones that were dazzling and too much for the eye to take in. Looking at this scene, Wang Ling sighed in his heart. He didn't quite understand why people nowadays like to perform acrobatics in battle the higher their realms were. Not only did this kind of flashy attack give people headaches, but in Wang Ling's view, it actually didn't have a crucial effect on the final outcome of the battle. So, wasn't it better to be simpler? Watching Evil Sword God charge at him and split into more and more clones, Wang Ling's gaze was focused on the one and only main body. Then, he raised his hand, ready to deliver a second slap. Evil Sword God's main body was getting closer and closer. In the next moment, a figure appeared in front of Wang Ling. But Wang Ling ignored him. His face was indifferent and expressionless. Go to hell. Mongrel Cultivator. At that moment, Evil Sword God's main body appeared behind him. On the old stone statue, Wang Ling spun around, boom. Like playing golf, a second slap landed precisely on Evil Sword God's face. That enormous force came crashing down with almost crushing force, and half of Evil Sword God's face directly caved in. Evil Sword God was sent flying by Wang Ling once again. A different beginning, but the same ending. History was always strikingly similar. Inside the intrinsic spirit field, Evil Sword God had already smashed through the teaching building. Wang Ling's slap directly sent Evil Sword God flying into the main building, passing through several classrooms and even the toilet in passing. When he finally flew out, he was still carrying the toilet's water tank on his head. Wang Ling gazed at him with a relaxed expression. With a wave of his hand, he casually used the gravitational spell to grab the 2 swords next to Evil Sword God. How is this possible? His face covered in blood, Evil Sword God crawled up from the sports field and spat out a mouthful of blood. He had been completely beaten senseless. At the same time, Wang Ling turned to look at another spot in the sky. Grenade-throwing senior immortal, who had been turned into a bloody mist by the power of Sword Dao earlier, had already reformed, and even his long johns and white Daoist robe had been perfectly restored. With the special effect of the soul suppression ring, he had been directly resurrected on the spot without a single mistake. When Wang Ling had arrived earlier, he had already sensed that Grenade-throwing senior immortal hadn't really died, because he could sense that the spirit sword contract between the Brilliant Victory sword and Grenade-throwing senior immortal hadn't been broken. Of the 10 soul suppression rings which he had refined using the Great Weapon Refining spell and the 8 classes of divine weapons, The rest were average third-class holy weapons, and grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's ring was the most special one. Apart from being able to hold a soul space, the most important ability of the soul suppression ring was to protect the soul and prevent it from dispersing. After 2 minutes, the soul could be used as a foundation to reform a physical body for resurrection. This was a genuine resurrection ring. The only difference was that other people's third-class soul suppression rings could only resurrect them twice at most. The one in grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's hand was a world-defying ring, as long as the ring wasn't destroyed. In theory, it could be done. You're tuning into the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.